You don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look me better. Put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 19th part of What If Deku Helps His Best Friend Peter Parker. Smash the like, share, and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Ever think you're pushing your students too hard? Kota spared his fellow teacher a glance. It was past 10, and the two men were eating dinner before retiring to bed themselves. Vlad had sake. Kota settled for tea, his plate half finished with rice, pork, and green beans. What I do with my students is my own business. I know, but I saw the damage done in your clearing. Vlad took a sip of his own sake while ignoring Aizawa's protest. I'd rather have my students be ready for anything, and not come in half-cocked. Vlad eyed the man. I'm not sure if that was an insult directed at me. They're training to be heroes, and the world is an unfair place. Kota took another breath. Better to push them here where they can afford to fail, Kota said as he set down his bowl. Vlad grunted, conceding the point, and the two fell into silence again. By the way, Vlad raised a quiet eyebrow as Aizawa broke the steady silence. I need to borrow one of your students. Vlad narrowed his eyes. If you think that you're going to use one of my students to build up one of yours, you're mistaken, Aizawa. The scraggly-haired teacher fought the urge to roll his eyes. He neither cared, nor had the inclination to waste time on Vlad's misplaced inferiority complex. But if he needed convincing, so be it. Iron sharpens iron, Kota replied. It'll benefit your student just as much. If you help me with this, I'll owe you. Vlad said nothing for a moment before grunting where he sat. Fine. Out with it. All right, class, Aizawa declared as he looked at class 1 of the following morning. Everyone was sleepy and rubbing their eyes. Glad to see you wake up on time. Didn't help for Tiger to come roaring into our rooms. Kaminari winced. Deal with it, Aizawa drawled. Now then, there is going to be some unique facets to this 3-week camp. We have come here to strengthen your quirks, that is true, but we can't simply focus entirely on that. So yesterday was considered a conditioning day, so to speak. He began to elaborate, and today will be an exercise day. During our duration here at camp, we will be having intermittent days of conditioning and exercising. 10 days, with day 11 being a break day. He pulled an item out, it being a calendar. Peter could spot the characters for conditioning and exercise, with conditioning being written in red and exercise in blue. The break day, on the 11th day, was written in green. Then we finish with the remaining 10 for the duration of this camp. Same pattern. If I remember correctly, this takes us out to August. We'll have only a few days before the fall term starts up, Ida declared. I will be going through each of your training sessions and giving you your instructions. You will be following this until lunch break. For now, he reached into the folder, pulling out some papers. On this sheet you'll find your partners for today. Group up with them and go to the allocated spot here in the camp. He began to pass them to each student as Peter took his, quickly identifying who his partners were. Parker, Aoyama, and Ajiro. Combat and awareness training. Fan out and get to your spots. I suggest you do some stretching as well. Parker, Ajiro, Aoyama with me. Uraraka, a moment. Peter perked up, turning as everyone else began to fan out to their respective training locations. It was 5:30 in the morning. The sun wasn't even high in the sky yet. First off, how are you three feeling? Aizawa uttered quietly as Uraraka, Ajiro, and Aoyama drew closer. After drinking plenty of water, I am better, sensei. It helped that I had a big dinner too, Aoyama declared. Although I wish I could have breakfast too. When your break comes in 6 hours, you can eat whatever you want then, Aizawa replied. Aizawa turned to Uraraka. Did you eat and drink enough too, Uraraka? Yeah, I should be good to go. Uraraka nodded. Put me in that ball. I'm ready to rock with my fresh new uniform. And you, Ajiro, are you good to go? Yeah, the blonde-tailed boy rubbed the back of his head. Pixie Bob apologized to me last night and Ragdoll cleared me too. He gripped his fists. I missed a whole day. I can't fall behind now. Let me know immediately if you feel any symptoms. I had something in mind for you and Kirishima, but he turned, and Peter saw his gaze as he saw Kirishima walking with Sato, the two of them chatting. We can save that for another day. So I came up with something light to help you catch up with your peers. Then came the explosive blasts from Bakugo as Peter rubbed the inside of his ear. He turned, seeing Bakugo take off, and Ida yelling as he dashed off after him. Were they racing? Sure thing, sensei. Okay, Uraraka, head to your spot. You won't be in the ball, you'll be with Yaoyorozu for today. If you have any questions, ask Mandalay. She'll be in your area for today. Right? The girl trotted off, although not before collecting a water bottle from the giant pyramid of various water bottle cases. Peter raised his hands slightly, and Aizawa turned to him. Come with me. He turned, and Peter and the others followed him through the clearing outside the lodge and towards one of the surrounding plateaus as Peter saw Tsuyu climbing her plateau using her tongue, yet her tongue was downward and she was lifting Izuku up. He could see the green blur latch onto an outcrop, then lift his arm to pull Tsuyu up the cliff face. Aizawa sighed. Seems they're getting the right idea of it. Must have asked Tiger for clarification. Peter looked at his sheet, seeing that Bakugo and Ida had the simple terms of endurance race and Izuku and Tsuyu had cooperative climbing. He looked over the other exercises, seeing Uraraka and Yaoyorozu with gravity weight plus production speed plus marksmanship training. Wonder what we are going to do? Ajiro asked. Combat awareness. Heck if I know. Least it's not boulders. Peter uttered. It was a workout sure, but man that was drudge work to the extreme as he looked down, rubbing his blisters. Got a bit boring after a while. Don't worry, you'll wish for boulders, Aizawa commented, facing ahead as Peter looked up, intrigued. I have faith that I will learn something of value and strengthen myself today. Aoyama beamed before he turned. Ah, it seems Kaminari is shining this morning. Peter looked at his sheet again. Kaminari was paired with Tokoyami and it read, Shadow Beast Taming. Ajiro spoke aloud. Makes sense, Peter replied, hands in his pockets as he folded his sheet. Kaminari could use his electricity to make light, a perfect counter to Tokoyami's dark shadow. By the way, Aizawa mused, you'll be getting a new partner in this exercise too. We will. Aoyama asked. Who? Peter asked as they arrived at a separate clearing, about 50 meters or so in diameter as Aizawa stood towards the center with a box of sorts. Peter's eyes widened. Off to the side was an outhouse and a kiddie pool full of some liquid. And there was Pony, yawning as she leaned against a tree as she turned, seeing the group. At the sight of them, the girl perked up and trotted on over. Good morning, sensei. She spoke in English. Hey Peter, you're early. Good. Aizawa replied in Japanese. Pony, you're our partner, Peter asked, and the blonde-haired Texan nodded. Yep, she beamed lightly. Vlad sensei asked for me to meet Aizawa here this morning, so I will be with you guys for the day. Heh, nice to see you again, Tsunotori. Ajiro waved. Good morning to you too, Pony exclaimed as she yawned. Haven't woken up this early since I helped out Pa on the farm back home, she said as she stretched her arms out. Glad to have you here, Pony. Peter smiled softly. He saw her look back, his brown eyes looking into her big blue ones. Same here, Peter. We finally get to train together too. Are we here to train or have a social hour? Aizawa grumbled, and Peter rolled his eyes. Pony perked up. Eep, sorry sensei. Anyway, you're all going to be training together, Aizawa answered for him as he knelt down, opening the box. Parker, your quirk is called Spider, yes? He asked, and Peter's brown eyes met his light obsidian orbs. Yeah, he replied curtly. Your precognition ability attached to it got a name. He asked rhetorically. The others didn't know, but he. Spider sense. Well, here's a question, class, he said, turning towards the other students. What are the strongest senses that a spider possesses? Could it be sight, sensei? Aoyama raised his hands dramatically. They do have 8 eyes after all. Peter sniggered a little until he felt Aizawa's eyes on him and he shut up, running a hand through his hair. Ajiro shrugged. Can't say I know. Hey Pete, do spider I mean? Pony caught herself, stopping her English question. Peter, do spiders have noses? She asked in Japanese. No, they don't have ears either, Peter replied, hands in his pockets as he looked back at Aizawa, who had a similar pose. And by process of elimination, that should help. Aizawa elaborated. To clarify, a spider's strongest sense, despite having 8 eyes, is not sight, but touch and smell. They don't have noses, but they have sensory organs in their feet, or on their pedipalps, Peter replied, speaking that last term in English making Ajiro and Aoyama tilt their heads. He lifted his fingers to his mouth, imitating fangs. Their fangs? Ah, do sense. Parker's on the money, but given how it is your quirk you should know everything about it. From my observation of this spider sense of yours, it's in need of improvement. Going back to a spider's senses, their heightened sense of touch also allows them to sense vibrations in the air and ground via the hairs all over their body. Aizawa spoke. Hence, we will do a unique training regimen for you 4. One day will be hard physical or quirk training, and on this day, you 3 will be working in tandem to tag and hit Parker. He opened the box, reaching in and pulling out some long black cloth with 2 large soft pads. While he wears this, Peter eyed the box as he took the item, noticing the term Yorua Rehabilitory Support Company on the side. So I wear this blindfold? Peter asked. Put it around your eyes, Aizawa elaborated. You will wear this for the exercise. Hours being blindfolded. Sheesh, Peter muttered. The earmuffs I take will blot out a lot of sound. They don't look all that, well, deafening. Put them on and see for yourself. The American did so. His ears felt the earmuffs clamp down slightly and silence. Can you hear me? Aizawa's voice came in from the right side, making Peter perk up. Yeah, he spoke aloud. I can. Good, you're in the center of the clearing, so stay where you are. The muffs are connected to my phone, so you'll only be able to hear me. I'll fill you in alongside Ajiro, Tsunotori and Aoyama. You three. Aizawa spoke. Your task in training will be to tag or hit Parker. Aoyama, use your lasers to strike from afar. Climb and use any terrain you see fit. But you must remain outside of the clearing. Peter heard Aoyama confirm with a wee over the speaker as he scratched his nose a little. Ajiro, that kiddie pool over there. That's filled with a unique sticky substance that you're going to put on the tip of your tail. Your task is simple. Tag Parker with it. Parker, avoid it at all costs. Consider Ajiro's tail swipe an instant kill. Got it, Peter replied. He heard Ajiro give a understood. Tsunotori, you can remain both in and outside the clearing. You will be airborne on your horns and you will be aiming to shoot down Peter using the blunt ends of your horns. You're to keep harassing him and try to steer him to being stunned by Aoyama's naval laser or get a hit in by Ajiro. Be creative. Okay, Aizawa-sensei. Tsunotori's voice acknowledged. I'll come back to check on your group later. Get into position. On my mark, your training starts. Aizawa's voice spoke out as Peter took a deep breath, shaking his limbs as he could hear and see nothing. Gotta focus. Nothing. Peter avoided some mass that missed him, hitting the ground with a crash. Aoyama's laser. No word of warning here. Peter barked in indignation. Villains won't give you a warning unless they're incredibly arrogant, powerful, or stupid. Same with your opponents. Aizawa replied in his ear with all the excitement of a bored college professor. He felt the tingle again, jumping up before recognizing his mistake. Blindfolded, he couldn't see where to latch a web to, not to mention distance, stability, or anything else. He hung in the air, and even though he could feel the approaching danger, there was only so much he could twist to try and avoid it before Pony's horns cracked solidly into his side, driving the air right out of him. He tumbled, hitting the ground in a roll before swiftly scrambling out of the way of what he could only assume was a tail swipe from Ajiro. Blind and deaf, he only felt a vague threat in front of him, where Ajiro evidently was before an impact knocked his foot out from under him, leaving his leg with a faint feeling of uncomfortable static and heat. He didn't have much time to dwell on the peculiar feeling of Aoyama's laser before he threw himself almost flat on his ass to avoid Ajiro's tail swipe from smacking him in the face, quickly rolling to dodge Pony's horns that came down from on high. 6 hours of this. He didn't think he could grow to dislike his paranoid teacher anymore. Useless. It was all useless. As he looked out the window from the lodge, Izumi Kota saw those wannabe heroes do their exercises en masse with his Aunt Shino and her friends going about, helping and giving them praise. Stupid. The brown-haired boy scoffed, looking back at his phone as he swiped and tapped as he played his game. Grand Blue Order. In the background, he had the Weather Channel on, but it was low. It was one of his more favorite shows, Highway Through Hell. He doubted that Aunt Shino liked him watching a show with that title, but Kota didn't care. Seeing mostly quirkless people, or people with weak quirks, helping people on the ice-laden roads of Hokkaido in the winter made him feel content. He didn't know why. Maybe because people like that were heroes in helping people overcome forces of nature like snow and rain. They weren't like the glory hogs who praised heroes that never come home to their families. He furrowed his brow, continuing his game as a commercial came on and droned on about how there was activity in the Pacific. It was typhoon season. No, they were far away from a typhoon landing here, plus the camp was inland. Most of them tended to go to the Philippines or China anyway. Good job on your first half of training today. Aizawa spoke out, looking at the ragged, sweat-drenched, and exhausted Class 1A+ pony. Peter was leaning against a post, the custom blindfold, ear-muffs around his neck as he looked up at Aizawa. He had several of those paint splotches on his leg, and he looked about, seeing Aoyama with his hand around his stomach, Pony rubbing her bloodied scalp, and Ajiro looking as tired as he was. Your 2-hour break starts here. Wash up and eat. We kick off again at 1 p.m. Tsunotori, the girl perked up. Thanks for coming by. We'll be expecting you more here during the coming days. The girl nodded and bowed. Right, sensei, she said, wiping her brow. Vlad wants you to reunite with him down in Class 1B's training area. Wash up and join him. He's planning on some speech or light post-training activity. I'll see you in 2 hours. He turned to the rest of his class. That'll be all. With that said, he walked back into the lodge. Got it. The girl looked at Peter and nodded. That was fun. Think you enjoyed kicking my ass a little too much. In response, the girl stuck her tongue out at him. You're fun when you bounce around. Pony saw Aizawa looking a little blue with his hands on his stomach. He gonna be okay. He used that outhouse a lot. He'll live, Peter said, but get a gas mask if you want to go in there. Don't plan to. Pony chuckled, and Peter couldn't help but snort. Anyway, gotta go catch up with Vlad sensei. And Peter, she said, smiling softly. It was nice training with ya. Why, yeah, same. Peter nodded, smiling back as the girl ran back with a wave. Peter-san, said a voice as Peter turned, seeing Momo standing nearby. We're about to head inside to wash up. Right? Sorry. Peter nodded as he faced the class. So should we do something here? Aizawa kinda left us hanging. He did give us instructions, so who here knows how to cook? Momo said, addressing the class. I can help. Had to cook for my roommate here and there. Peter said with a shrug. I know how to make sweets mostly. Sato raised his hand. I help my mom in the kitchen a lot. Sue spoke up, hand on her chin. I know my way around a little. Shoji added. Same. Todoroki commented, stepping forth. I know how to make a mean cup ramen. Kirishima declared, earning him some glances and a giggle from a certain pinkette. I don't think cup ramen will fill us up, Kirishima-kun. Ashido patted his shoulder. But for effort. I know how. Cut in a voice, and Peter's jaw tightened. Aw, thanks Bakugo, Momo said. I can help too. I help cook with my mom a lot as well, Kota said. Wow, almost half the class knows how to cook. And most of them are dudes, Kaminari commented, and he got a sideways glare from Jiru. What's that supposed to mean? She said as her earphone jacks writhed like serpents. The blonde boy paled. Nothing. Enough dawdling now. We have 2 hours, Momo said with a clap of her hands. Yeah, just gotta wash my face. Nothing a sink can't solve, Peter said with a shrug as he walked on ahead. Let's get rolling. And everyone on cooking duty went to the kitchen. Everyone washing their faces and hands in the sink to clean up a bit as everyone got their aprons on. I'll set the tables, Shoji said. Asui, care to help? Sure, and call Mitsu. The frog girl replied as she walked with the taller boy. I can handle rice. Peter spoke up as he looked about in the cupboards for multiple pans. They had to feed 20 people, so they would need plenty of rice. With several large pots, he got the water boiling as he watched his compatriots at work. Even Kota was helping Bakugo by supplying him with green onions to chop up. Wow Bakugo, you're cutting them up fast, the dinosaur-esque boy commented. Go and collect some red beans. I'll make paste out of them. The blonde bummer growled out. You know how to make rice balls. Yep. Peter began to pour in the required rice as he saw Shoto at work cooking up the meat with Sato. Sato was applying sauces and marinades as Shoto kept an eye on and flipped over the meat. From the look of it, it was a simple flap meat steak and teriyaki and some chicken in a glaze of some kind. Before long, the tables were set, a buffet kind of setup was established, and everyone had finished entering the dining area. Their order of the day, steak and chicken bowls with green onions alongside red bean paste rice balls. Peter scarfed his down, feeling satisfied as he saw his classmates go up to the line for seconds, with Ida diligently making sure everyone stayed in order. It was honestly starting to become a routine. Everyone went all out all day. They rested for a bit, lunch prep which was a pain and a half, then back to busting their ass until sundown, and then it was dinner prep, the most stressful time of the day. Because after everything that was thrown at them, the gentle motions of being an adult were all the more grueling. Like, what were they even going to have? That was the true battle of the day. Thankfully, Momo gave everyone a break and provided a meal plan with Asui's help. Simple, effective, and stopped arguments before they could really begin. Most of the time. You sure we need this much spice? Peter asked his dual-eyed classmate. Shoto looked at him, and if Peter didn't know the boy, he might have thought that he was giving him a flat look. Instead, the New Yorker just shrugged his shoulders and went along with it. Shoto went back to cutting up some onions, which gave Peter a quick second to mix it in it. Dang, this was good. It's my mother's recipe, Shoto said, which made Peter do a double take. The boy wasn't even looking at him, and Peter thought that he was the one that had a spider sense. Well, thanks for sharing, it'll fill everyone up. I love it, Kirishima yelled as he sipped the broth straight from the bowl. Everyone in the room was enjoying their late dinner as Peter surveyed the room. He was seated beside Shoto and Kirishima, with Izuku across from him as he chatted with Ochako and Takoyami. Momo was with Jiru and Hagakure, and he could spot Kota chatting up a storm with a stoic Bakugo as he continued to eat. How someone as kind as Kota could ever socialize with Bakugo was beyond high. Alright everyone, pack it up, Tiger called, barging into the room, forcing every eating student to stop and turn. The tall man stood proud, grinning as Aizawa walked in after him. Finish up your meals pronto. We got a little activity planned. The baggy-eyed teacher looked through each of the students with Ragdoll behind him, grinning like she always seemed to, despite Peter hearing some groans ring out. You kittens have done well. You're all on the 6th night, Ragdoll exclaimed, and as a little reward, we prepared a space for you to watch the stars for a little break before bed. Teacher, Ida said, holding up a hand. What about the dishes though? We have eaten quite a lot and it is our duty to clean up. Won't that put us past lights out at 10? We'll be doing dishes, Aizawa grumbled. You're good to go. And don't worry, you'll be sleeping in a little tomorrow as a result of this. We'll get up at 6 instead of 5. Thank you for the clarification. Huh? A star walk? That could be neat. Everyone feeling up for it? Peter asked the room. I don't see why we wouldn't be, Kirishima said with a smile. His response seemed to be a sentiment shared by the rest of the room. In fact, no one seemed eager to stay in the room after eating their meals. There was a small clank of a chair as Bakugo pushed off his seat to walk out of the room with his hands in his pockets. He noticed the eyes on him, and his eyebrow twitched in irritation. What? We got to fucking walk out there, don't we? He asked, walking out before anyone else could comment. Next to Peter, Shoto stored his gear and wordlessly walked after him, which was the start of a tiny little avalanche of Class 1 following their explosive classmate. He dropped his stuff, and just at the door, Kirishima kicked off the frame with Izuku standing close by. Then, first the promise of a hot spring, now a night out. We're getting spoiled. I don't think that's necessarily what they're going for, Izuku stammered out. Kirishima shrugged. Whatever, I mean, it's still cool. I haven't had the chance to see the stars in a long time. Can't exactly see much in the city, Peter agreed. A shame, Momo called from just ahead of them. There's a simple pleasure of looking up at the stars. Yeah, but most people would like to look at other things, Mina said, only to get a small smack from Jiru. Enough of that, you're going to give the boys ideas. Too late, Kaminari called without any ounce of shame. Peter couldn't help but cough a little, doing his best to look at the fantastically grown trees in the forest. Next to him, Izuku was doing his best to do the same, as was Uraraka. It was hard to keep that up as Kirishima threw his arms around Peter and Izuku's necks. The two boys were pulled towards their more eccentric classmate as he grinned. Not a bad thing when everyone's looking at us climbing the leaderboards, right guys? Yeah, sure, Peter said, untangling himself from the boy's arm. Though poor Izuku seemed to be having a hard time of it. I mean, yeah, we gotta get a license and get through everything, but we're getting there, Kirishima declared with a defiant clenched fist. Don't we have like 2 years of UA left? Peter asked, somewhat seriously, only for the redhead to blink. I mean, sure, but why should that stop us? He asked. Because you can't be on the leaderboards until we've gotten through school, Momo asked. Another blink from the redhead. That's not really manly. I don't think that being a hero and going through the proper steps is supposed to be manly, Mina commented with a tiny giggle. It's something that needs to be done, Takoyami, the boy speaking for the first time. Regardless, I think we should be looking up. Peter glanced up, and, whoa, this far away from the camp, no lights, nothing from a city, the stars were out in full force. Nebulas shined down and the moon twinkled brightly. There was a small shift, and Peter saw everyone taking seats on the forest floor. Bakugo took a rock, Shoto leaned against a tree, and most of the class just chose the ground, looking up. Peter took the initiative and just laid back, arms behind his head as he let out a sigh, gazing up at the stars above. He'd never had this, even back home in New York. He could hear some mutterings, gossiping amongst friends as Peter looked around. Every one of his classmates, content, at peace. He could live with that. It had been several days, but at last, they were finally there on their break day. Day 11. All right, Aizawa said as he stood in the kitchen, overlooking most of the students who were eager to get to work on eating their breakfast. Today is a rest day. Just don't do anything stupid. Lights out will be at 10 tonight, but meals are all up to your discretion, as usual. He then turned away. That'll be all. Enjoy your day off, kittens. Pixie Bob cheered as she followed Aizawa out of the room. Izuku couldn't help but smile as he saw the rest of his class cheer. We can go swimming, Ashido exclaimed. We can finally take a day to nap. Hava, Jiru sighed. Finally, liberation from the black, Takoyami muttered. That sounded so wrong in so many ways, Takoyami-kun. Hagakure chastised. So, what are you going to be doing with your day off? Peter asked as he sat beside Izuku for breakfast. The green-haired boy looked at his friend as he munched on homemade waffles. Me? Well, I dunno really. Maybe I'll just take Kaminari's lead and take a nap. Izuku stretched his muscles a bit. I could use it personally. Don't blame ya, Peter murmured. But it would help to explore the national park, right? Yaoyorozu suggested. After all, I would like to know what's beyond those plateaus and whatnot. Just lots of trees, Uraraka added, the brunette sitting beside the black-haired beauty. And some hills. Although east of here are some cliffs and hills, at least from what I can remember from my internship. How about you, Peter? What are you gonna do? She asked. Going to try to hit up the hot springs, hopefully without too many people. Peter sighed, munching on some bacon strips. Totally unlikely, dude. Zaru said. That place is going to be a hot commodity for a while. I know that I plan to hit the pond for a nice swim. Sue sighed in relief. Peter sighed, resting his chin on his palm. I may just not even bother at this point. He said a little more, looking embarrassed. Maybe you just need to be comfortable is all. We can go together, sit on the far sides of the spring. Izuku stepped, hand on his friend's shoulder. Peter turned, blinking as he wiped his lips. I mean, this would be your first time in a hot spring. I wouldn't want you to miss out, he said with a smile and a raised fist. Peter took a deep breath. Well, I guess I helped you way back when. If it's you, then okay, I'll do it with ya. There was a sudden gasp and Izuku perked up from behind, seeing a set of floating pajamas. Is this forbidden love? Love cheeks up as if cupping cheeks, and the green-haired youth can see the tinge of pink. No, it's not, Izuku and Peter said out loud at the same time, earning the laughter of mostly everyone around. And the two boys looked back, looking as sheepish as possible. Uraraka was stone-faced, and even Yaoyorozu couldn't help but giggle behind her hand. And so came together the ace of Class 1A and the former dead last. Zaru smirked. Protagonists in a young adult light novel. Hello. Between the two, who is the Yuke and the Seam? Ashido asked. What hat? Kirishima asked, noodles in his mouth. Izuku paled while Peter pinched the bridge of his nose. I think you're going a bit too far on that one, Peter mumbled. And I thought back home was crazy. I don't even know that Yuke and Seam is. Parker-kun is totally the Yuke, Hagakura stated. Midoriya-kun has that big Seam energy. Zaru sipped from her water, the two boys feeling her eyes on them. I can see it. Hagakura then let out some kind of sigh. Can you guys stop? This is getting awkward. Izuku gawked, fiddling with his fingers. No, seriously, what's in Yuke and Seam? From what I can gather, it's defined as what's top and bottom, and Peter caught himself, his jaw unhinged as it clicked, and even more laughter erupting about. He had his hand to his face, and Izuku felt his own face heat up like a tomato, head bowed low. This is crazy, Peter muttered under his breath. Like the kind of crazy hero work you did back in America? Uraraka asked, making Peter and Izuku perk up as the laughter began to die down. What makes you say that? Peter asked. Well, remember the entrance exam? When you and Deku saved me? She asked. You had that costume on, and from what I can remember you were hopping around while turning those robots into scrap like no problem at all. So, did you have experience or so even back then? Yeah, that costume with the metal legs did look pretty high-tech. You from a hero family like Ida-kun? Hagakura asked. Peter looked at his plate. Well, I did inherit my costume from my idol, and... He looked up, then back to Izuku and everyone else. Izuku even followed his gaze, and eating his soba several feet away, even Todoroki was interested. Yeah, I did some hero work back then with him. Well, that answers a lot of questions, Uraraka mused. Say, when were you going back to work on it as well? Your hero costume? Peter's eyebrow twitched at the question. Eventually, Izuku winced a little. Peter was always a smart guy, always working with Hatsune and all. Maybe they didn't have the resources. Who was your hero mentor back in America, Parker? Zaru asked as she ate some egg mixed with her rice. I'd like to know too, Izuku said, curiosity piqued. Someone with that kind of tech had to be a high-ranked kind of a hero too. Peter, however, chewed on his lower lip. Class, we have a special guest. Aizawa spoke out, but Izuku was too busy rubbing the back of his head. Peter scratched his neck as he reached down with his chopsticks. Well, hello everyone, said a familiar voice, and Izuku turned as he sipped his water. He saw Peter looking on, face neutral, but his eating motion stopped, and Izuku spat out his water at the sight of All Might in his shrunken form, his Hawaiian shirt almost falling off his frame. I'm Yagi Toshinori, one of the assistant teachers at UA, he said with a wave and a beaming closed-eye smile. Nice to see you all. Who's he? Sato inquired. Beats me, never seen him, Ajiro replied. Oh, I may have seen him a few times around UA, Hagakura pointed out. Toshinori was focused on the gawking face of young Midoriya, doing his best not to cringe at him. You're making a scene, he cursed mentally as he put on a big smile. My, young Midoriya, is it? Something the matter with the tea? You looked like you choked, he said, walking over and patting his young successor on his back. Midoriya wiped his mouth, looking up and nodding, but still having big and confused eyes. Why yeah, sorry Jay just went down the wrong pipe. he replied, looking up with an awkward smile. All right, just making sure. Now then, as for why I am present, I came here to the camp to help those with power-type quirks, he said, hands in his pockets as he beamed towards the brooding Aizawa. I am a teacher after all. Anyway, as you can see, this is Yagi Toshinori, Aizawa explained. For why most of you have not seen him, he is usually helping your upperclassmen and assisting other classes. A teacher that goes around to help other classes and not be with a single homeroom. That's weird. Asui mused with her finger to her chin. It's something Americans used. Parker, Toshinori smiled, grinning towards Peter who perked up. Back in America, did you have multiple teachers in a classroom as well? Why yeah. Peter recovered, resting his arms on the table. In my science classes we usually had 2 teachers, or a teacher and 2 teacher assistant students. Exactly, Toshinori exclaimed in English. Yagi-sensei, if I may ask, were you a hero once before too? Todoroki asked, speaking up for the first time. Toshinori perked up, seeing the dual-haired boy stare his way. Young Bakugo seemed to be engrossed in eating to care all that much, with young Kota by his side staring at him. Well, I was a sidekick once, but hey, we aren't here to share life stories and all that. Today is your rest day, and I figured why not give you some treats. Toshinori opened the door and bent down, lifting up several pans full of brownies. Made them myself. Homemade recipe. Are those brownies awesome? Jiru spoke out. Me too. A girl like me loves her chocolate. Ashido cheered. I can go without for now. Yurazu winced, but smiled nevertheless. Toshinori beamed with pride. Nana had taught him that recipe too. It was nostalgic always cooking that up. Toshinori set them down on the counter and walked back. I'll go unpack and enjoy your rest day, kids. Don't let me be a distraction. Toshinori saw most of the kids all get up and walk on over to the counter. He left the room with Aizawa, closing the door behind them. I still don't think this is a good idea, Aizawa muttered, the 2 of them alone as they walked down the hall. Oh relax, me coming by to help ain't going to be so bad, Toshinori replied with an assuring grin. Besides, I didn't mind getting some fresh air outside of Tokyo. Now you have my plan and notes in your email while your phone should get reception. I'll give you a tour of the area myself, then I'll take a nap. He yawned, and he sauntered off as Toshinori let out a sigh. I'll help introduce you to Class B as well. Get that out of the way. Sure thing. Toshinori smiled, hands on his hips as he looked out the window to the wonderful sight of the forest, and the blue skies with thick white clouds. You, all right buddy? Peter asked, looking over at a sweating Izuku. The green-haired boy perked up, turning over and laughing. Ichahaha, you doing okay? Never thought we can get another teacher here. Thought it was going to be us and Aizawa-sensei. Peter stared. Izuku's nervousness was not subtle. Do you know him, Deku-kun? Uraraka asked curiously as she sipped from her drink. Izuku fiddled with his fingers lightly. Well, when I first got to UA, I was directed to a professor who knows about power-type quirks given how much backlash I had suffered previously. We, started around after the sports festival. Izuku lied. Peter kept his face carefully blank. Oh wow, these brownies look great. Mina said off to the side as a line began to form in front of said dessert. And from there, he and I would visit on and off, and I would show how much progress I've gotten with my quirk. Izuku spoke. So yeah, seeing him out here is quite a shock. Come along now, Mesamis. There's enough for all of us, Aoyama declared as Peter and the rest stood up to get in line, grabbing small plates to gather up their pastry. Peter made sure to get his tiny little nugget as he walked back to his seat. Mina leaned over. You're eating that much. I didn't take you for a diabetic or something, Parker. The pinkette exclaimed as Peter ate from his nugget, chewing softly. Nah, Peter smiled, swallowing. Just not that peckish is all. But it's so good. Mina gutted out, her plate having several layers of the stuff. Peter noticed that Momo didn't get any. Yeah, Momo, how come you don't want some? I've had enough for a lifetime here at this camp. Momo waved her off. Trust me, next time I eat a brownie, I may vomit. Yeah, Parker, you're missing out. Kaminari spoke with his mouth full. His plate is full as Mina's. Yagi-sensei is a great baker. Besides, that expression on your face means you love it too. Did you become a Buddha or something? No, well here, have some of mine. Don't miss out. Mina had great speed as she crammed a whole big slice of chocolate confectionery into his mouth. I'm a MHG. Peter bit down, recoiling as he swallowed on instinct, coughing. Ashido, give him a warning, Momo admonished sternly. Peter had the presence of mind to have a momentary sense of panic before it faded away like static and a stupid smile started tugging at his lips. Crime rates are going down, Shouta asked incredulously. The skeletal form of the hidden number 1 hero nodded. The two teachers walked through the forest, hearing the distant sound of forest and earth being upheaved by vines, rocks falling, and more than one laser going into the sky along with some English cursing. I thought it was a fluke, Yagi admitted, but I've checked in with some old friends in the force, hardly a spike since the Hasu incident around Tokyo. Frankly, I only came here when I was sure that everything could be held together, Yagi admitted. From what I can gather, crime rates are truly going down. The thing is, some stations are getting a few APBs, small fry like purse stealers or convenience store robberies. But most of the more established gangs from what I've been hearing are. The man looked down. They're just vanishing. Usually that's a good thing, but Yagi frowned, the two of them coming to a clearing that looked out to another section of the wide valley that the wild pussycats called home. Beyond the vast forest laid great mountains as they gazed south. Dark clouds were forming just beyond there too. Shouta could make out the light rumble of thunder. I have a feeling it's something else entirely. Gut feeling. Shouta couldn't help but frown. Could it be a vigilante-like stain, only targeting criminals? Or a possible gang war? Or the Hero Public Safety Committee cracking down? My inside guy isn't sure. And if the HPSC were involved, I'd imagine they would be more transparent in parading their results. All Might had his hands in his pockets before looking back to Shouta, his dark blue eyes looking right into the shaggy-haired man's ruby red. You should contact your people too. See whether or not this is limited to just Tokyo or not. I'll see what I can do, for no. Sensei, came a voice, and both men turned, seeing a frantic Ida. There you are. Ida, what is it? Shouta asked, seeing his voice heightened and panicked. It's Parker. He's acting crazy. Shouta felt his heart stop, and from the corner of his eyes, he saw Yagi seem to pale on the spot. Shouta broke out into a sprint. So help me God. He'd left for 5 minutes. 5 goddamn minutes. Young Ida, tell me, what's going on with young Parker? Yagi asked, his voice desperate as Shouta ran as if the devil were behind him. Well, you see, 2 minutes earlier. Ooh, Parker, you okay there, bud? Peter Parker, the ace of Class 1A, the freshman phenom, however, was not home at the moment, and he let Kaminari know as much as he was standing up, staggering with a flushed face. He had then had a dumb look on his face as he giggled. Hick Thor. Hey, why'd you shoved, HM? He slurred in English, and Momo got up from her seat. Kaminari waved his hands in front of Peter a few times, not exactly knowing what that would accomplish, but he thought it was a good idea. You aren't looking so hot, dude. He turned towards the brunette. Why is he speaking in English now? TFFFT. Nuo. Just a little warm, and God, you look skinnier than I remembered. Can anyone tell me what he's saying? Kaminari exclaimed. Peter, Momo rushed over, hands on his shoulder. Are you sick? She spoke in English as he looked up with a lazy look, before he let out a giggle. Oh wow, Mamuo, it got like 2 twins C-circline behind you know. He stumbled out of her grasp as he fell back onto the chair, letting out a deep sigh. Oh God, that's strong stuff Mr. Miyagi I made. Oh wait, Mr. Yagi-ma, my bad. The hell is he doing? Jiru asked with a raised eyebrow. Maybe he's sleepy, Asui suggested, walking over. Ace, what happened to you? You feeling fine? Kirishima sat down beside him. Peter looked at him, giving a light laugh and a big silly grin. Yeah, I'm fine, Kirishima, he answered in Japanese thankfully. Just need to I dunno. He stumbled again, this time Momo catching him before he fell flat on the floor, helping him to sit up straight on the chair. Peter, what happened? Momo asked in English, urgency gripping her chest. Should we call someone? Oh, just call Aunt May ... She has medicine. I think, he toned, his shoulders slumping as he looked off. She turned her attention to an utterly frozen Ishido. What did you do? The pinkette threw her hands up in the air. Hey, don't look at me. I just gave him the brownie I wanted to share. That's it. Then he started acting like he was hammered. That's right, regular chocolate. Brownies. Her eyes went wide with realization. Peter was drunk, and probably really drunk, considering that the brownies came in large squares. He had one bite of a large square Ishido tried to force feed him, and he had that nugget from before. She looked at the chocolate treats on the plate. Just how much caffeine was in those? She almost wanted to laugh, but considering the situation, she needed to take care of this before it got out of hand. Okay, everyone, she called out. Let's get him to the infirmary before he hurts himself. She started to pick him up and try to walk him to the teacher. Ishido started to panic, yelling, oh crap, did I poison him? Wait, are these brownies poisoned? Siro squealed. Yaoyorozu, what's wrong with him? To put it simply, Momo brought a mumbling Peter under her arm. He's drunk. The class stared at her in silence, all while Peter was blinking. You mean that Parker gets pummeled by chocolate? Bakugo asked from his side of the room, Kota sitting by his side. Momo sighed. Midoriya, a little help. Izuku obliged, going to Peter's other side and helping him with his arm around his shoulders. No, not chocolate. Caffeine. Spiders get drunk on caffeine. And since chocolate has some amounts of caffeine in it, he probably got drunk on that too. The cat was out of the bag already, she might as well explain it. Of course, Uraraka couldn't keep her giggles to herself, and neither could Hagakure, Jiru or some of the guys for that matter. Soon there was howling laughter all around the tables. You guys, Momo called out, our classmate is intoxicated and you're all mocking him. Ida exclaimed, cease this shameful display at once. I know, but drunk on chocolate of all things. Jiru wheezed. I'm sorry but, hehehe. It's too funny. And so falls the great ace. Zero howled as he laughed into the table, banging it with his fist. Come on, let's get you two. I'm thirsty. Peter got up, moving away from Izuku and Momo as he stumbled forward, moving to step out of the doorway. Peter apparently forgot his own strength, or how doors worked. With a tremendous crack and a crash, half the door snapped off, the other half hanging from the flummoxed Peter's hand. Was the door locked? He mumbled. The others started getting up, inching forward. If he broke the refrigerator or something more important. Well, they were all in for it probably. Come on Parker-san, let's just win. Izuku when the others started to surround him to cut him off. Peter leapt up, attaching himself to the ceiling. Excuse me, need some water, he groused. Peter, get down from there, Momo commanded in English as she gave chase with a walk, seeing him crawl along the ceiling. Who? He turned down. Oh, hey Momo ... Your English is amazing by the way. Thank you, but please. She let out a frustrated sigh, hearing more giggles from Uraraka and the others. Ida, can you please go grab Aizawa-sensei? Right. Ida got up and ran out of the room. Among the laughing members of the group was Bakugo, the blonde bomber, red in the face and practically wheezing. All I had to do to kick his ass was shove a Snickers bar down his throat. This is fucking rich. Bakugo-san, please. Let him talk Mamu. Peter slurred in English as he crawled. Trust me, life's a lot more tolerable. He let out, crawling ahead. When you just ignore that, stupid loser. The fuck you say? Bakugo barked, and Kota was behind him, as was Sato as they held him back. Easy Bakugo, he's drunk. Kota said. Yeah, just ignore him dude, he didn't mean it. Sato exclaimed. Izuku ran ahead. This whole camp is a menagerie of madness. Tokoyami uttered, brooding. But ... not boring. Shoji mused, sitting by the bird boy's side. A leaping Asui landed on the wall adjacent to Peter, crawling along with him with a ribbit. Kitchen's this way Parker-chan, Asui said calmly, turning and looking up at him with a smile. You're going the wrong way. Oh ... am I? Peter slurred, before turning the other way. Oh, you're right. He smiled, looking down at the green-haired girl. Thanks Suzie. He slurred in English. Close enough, ribbit. She got her tongue wrapped around Peter and she hopped to the floor with Peter along for the ride. Landing on his feet wasn't really an issue normally. At the moment, however, he was having some trouble. So with a clear sway he hit the ground and toppled onto his side like a tree. Equally off balance, the frog girl also hit the ground with a thud, Sue releasing a half-strangled croak of surprise to boot. Your head's heavy, Sue complained. Said head craned itself upwards from where it rested on her stomach. Hiya Sue TTS Susan. Your tongue is strong. Kinda what I hurled. Peter hiccuped. What I thought about. Mantis ... He gave another dumb smile. Your stomach is soft. Sui nodded, patting Peter on the head and ruffling his hair, her tongue still around him. There Parker-chan. I know. She looked up as Momo. Damn Momo, want me to help him to the infirmary? Why yes, please, thank you Asui. We'll help too, growled a voice, and Dark Shadow had his claws on Peter's shoulders, rubbing and kneading lightly. Huh, oh, hiya Dark Shadow, hee. Peter giggled. Waz up. Doing good. You doing good, Parker? The shadow monster said as Tokoyami approached. I'll lend a hand. He droned, glare present on his features. Then again, he was glaring most of the time. Momo nodded in gratitude, looking back around the room. Bakugo's little episode had stopped and he was snarling while looking out the window while Kota nibbled on his brownie. Yeah, let's go and inform the others. And what's going on here? Cut in a voice as everyone turned. And there was Aizawa with Yagi, the two teachers staring wide-eyed at the sight of dumb-faced Peter with Asui's tongue wrapped around him and Dark Shadow's claws on his shoulders. I made Parker drunk, Ashido squeaked, Aizawa looking down at her with an annoyed expression, then back to the class. Mind telling me why Parker is wrapped up by Asui like a pinata? He asked. The hell's a piccata? Zero asked. A food. Hagakure raised her hand excitedly. I tried those once. It's pronounced pinata Zero, Aoyama said with a pose. Never mind. Aizawa groused with a sigh. Sensei, Momo spoke up. Peter-san ate a little bit of brownie and, as a result, he got a little drunk. Ashido didn't want him to miss out on tasting the brownies, so she fed him most of a square. Momo elaborated. Young Parker can get drunk off of chocolate, Yagi exclaimed with a tilt of his head. Caffeine. Aizawa took in a sharp breath through his nose and sighed outwardly, annoyed. Spiders get drunk when they ingest caffeine, Yagi. Yagi froze up. Really? My goodness. He spoke in English on that last bit. Come on, let's get you to the infirmary. Crisis averted. The rest of the class not currently restraining Peter began to rejoin their social and entertainment activities. Ashido meanwhile tried to slip quietly into a corner. Nothing to see here. Nope. Definitely no. Ashido. Aizawa spoke up, and the girl jumped to her feet, turning as her black and gold eyes widened with anticipation and fear. Why yes, sensei. Judging by your overwhelming sense of honor and personal responsibility, it seems to me that you want to make up for this, right? His hair began to wave dangerously. The girl slumped. I'm getting like double cleanup duty or something, right? How very astute of you, he drawled, turning towards Yagi. Take Parker to the infirmary. Hopefully this spell will roll over with the right meds and rest. Have people watch over him too, just in case he's too rowdy. I can come, Kirishima exclaimed, running up. Thank you, young Kirishima, Yagi smiled. Well, in that case, how about we rotate people to watch over him? He said as he stepped aside, allowing Asui and Takoyami to guide Peter out. That sounds like a good idea, Yagi-sensei, thank you. Momo bowed lightly. I'll help with the first watch, I suppose. I'll help too, Izuku exclaimed. I'm already here, so. Hi, not, ribbit, Asui suggested. Same, Takoyami added. As Shouta saw Yagi leave, he saw the man rest his hand on Midoriya's shoulder as they walked down the hallway. He turned back to a cringing Ashido and the rest of class who was looking on in anticipation. Go enjoy your day, everyone, Shouta stated, eyes boring down on her. Ashido, tell me what you did to Parker in your own words. Well, the girl looked guilty as can be as she told her tale on how she wanted Parker to enjoy some of the brownies when he was just enjoying a little nibble. Come with me, Shouta ordered, walking as the pink-haired girl obliged. They walked down a hallway as he opened the door, leading to a classroom of sorts. Shouta looked in the desk, finding a notepad of paper and some pens. You're going to write two things. 1. What no means to you and what you'll do going forward regarding that statement. 3 pages, minimum. Ashido perked up. In English, Ashido blanched. Her worst subject. I will look over it and ensure it is perfect with no grammatical errors and pronunciation. Then you'll write a letter of apology to Parker, primarily how you'll never do it again. There was silence as he set it on the desk in front of her as he sat behind the desk. In English, yes, the girl groaned. All right, seems to be tucked in just fine, All Might said, at ease as he and Izuku stood outside of the infirmary. Peter was resting there, coming down from his intoxicated state thanks to eating those brownies. I heard in America that there are brownies that make people act crazy. I never knew it would act like that. I guess even the most powerful of abilities have their drawbacks, Izuku murmured as he looked from the window looking into the infirmary door to back up to All Might. Right, better talk to him now. He looked back and forth down the hallway, seeing that no one else was around. Okay, seeing how we are alone. You want to know why I came, huh? All Might asked, nodding. Figured you'd ask. Come, let's talk in private, he said, as he led the way for the young green-haired boy down the hall. They climbed the stairs to the second floor and entered a room. All Might closed the door and locked it, sighing as Izuku saw the nice-looking bed and general hotel room aesthetic. He also looked up, seeing none of Mandalay's cameras either. It was more appealing than the simple futons they had to crash on every night after hard training. Okay, All Might turned and sat on the chair near one of the tables, gesturing for Izuku to sit by the bed. Izuku promptly did so. Now then, we have time to ourselves. So, how's training been, young Midoriya? Oh, it's been hard, really going at it non-stop. First few days I thought I was gonna keel over, Izuku mused. Reminded me of the training we did when I inherited your quirk. Then I guess that this training wasn't so bad for you, wasn't it? Toshinori grinned wryly. I got into the hang of it. Some days I mainly do stretches or sparring with Tiger, but on others we did unique workouts. Like I had to race against Ida in cone drills one time. For another I had to pull up a Sui with my arm when we scaled a cliff. Izuku looked at his knuckles. And then there's me trying to punch out Kirishima too. Toshinori spotted the scabs on his knuckles, nodding. Well, this is all an effort to have you prepared for the provisional exams. Toshinori crossed his arms. Once you get that, you're one step closer to being a pro hero. He grinned again before letting out a sigh. Seeing you now, he remembered back then to that scrawny little kid who was crying his eyes out in gratitude on that sunset-lit street over a year ago. to this strong young hero in training before him. Compared to back then, it's making me feel a little nostalgic. Izuku blushed under the praise, smiling as he fiddled with his fingers. So, how has been your control on One for All anyway? Surely with no distractions and focusing on using your quirk, I bet your control has increased quite a bit. Oh, well, if I had to remember from the night before, Izuku mused, cupping his chin. I think I can get a handle on, say, 13, maybe 14% right now. I could push it to, say, 16 if need be. His eyes were furrowed in thought. I know I did so back on Island against those villains. That's good to hear at least. As for One for All, let's try to set a goal for now. We did a crash course for your training to prepare you to become a better hero, and now you're well on your way there. He raised a finger. Let's focus on December. By that point, you should be able to control 20% of my quirk. December. Izuku spoke aloud, eyes moving about as Toshinori saw the gears in his head moving. I think I can do that. At base, not pushing it. Izuku bit his lip at that, before Toshinori flashed him a customary grin. And I'll be there every step of the way. Toshinori stood up, walking over and placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. For now, his dark blue eyes seemed to almost glow. I'm giving it my plus ultra and helping you become better than me, young Midoriya. No matter what. Izuku beamed, feeling pride swell in his chest before nodding. Right. Later that day, NNGH. Peter groaned as he rose up in bed, rubbing his head as he took note of his surroundings. Where am I? He asked, seeing that he was in the infirmary within the lodge. I remember eating one of those brownies before I conked out. Oh, Parker-san, you're awake, said a voice in his head, making Peter jump, hand going to his ear. What the? Who's there? He said in English, looking around. That wasn't Karen, his earpiece was in his bag. Easy there, it's Mandalay. I'm in security at the moment. Peter blinked before looking up, catching the camera looking down and focusing its lens on him. It's my quirk, telepathy. Peter blinked. Okay, so you were keeping watch. More or less. Peter looked out, seeing that the sun was beginning to set, and he frowned lightly. Well, he did rest most of the rest day. But it was almost dinner time too. So, did I miss out anything exciting? Some of your classmates went to the pond for a dip. Others have been on their phones constantly and catching up to their parents. Aizawa had us open up the cell tower's restrictions for the day, and all. Mandalay spoke in his head. You should wash up and take the day while you can, Parker. Are you feeling any other symptoms? Not really, just a mild headache, nothing big, Peter said as he put on his shoes and released a big sigh. All right then, I'll leave you to your day. Peter looked up at the camera and nodded before walking towards the door. Well, better get to his phone and talk to you. After a nice long show, he opened it, and right there was Izuku. Oh hey Midori, Peter said, taking note of Izuku's surprise. Oh hey Parker, he laughed nervously. Guess you're back up. Are you feeling alright? Doing okay. Just stretching my legs. Peter stretched his arms a bit, before gazing back at the shorter boy. What were you doing here? Oh, I was about to check up on you. Yaoyorozu, Kirishima, Takoyami, and Asui did it earlier, so it was my turn. He spoke as Peter stretched his neck next. Thanks, aunt. He noticed Izuku fiddling with his fingers. Did I do anything dumb while I was, well, drunk? You don't remember anything. Peter felt a little ill. There was a beat of silence. Was I, Peter felt a knot in his chest. Hard to manage. God, so embarrassing. Goodbye school cred. You were cooperative for the most part. Aizawa came in when Yaoyorozu had to go for help, and things died down from there. He had us all clean up, and all of us made sure, he stammered for a moment, that you were both okay. He pointed to the nightstand. Oh, and Ishido came by earlier with an apology letter too. Peter looked over and he took the letter. It was in English, but the penmanship needed improvement. Peter, I am very sorry for stuffing that brownie in your mouth. You said no and I disregarded your feelings and made you waste most of your rest day. It will not happen again, as I still see you as a friend and someone who I can rely on. I hope that you can forgive me. Mina Ishido. Well, how thoughtful of her. Peter mused lightly. Yeah, Aizawa was with her most of the day too. Never a good thing when you have Aizawa looking over your shoulder. Peter commented. So, are you mad at her for what she did? Izuku asked. It's not like she stuffed cocaine up my nose or something. It was chocolate, she didn't know. Peter shrugged. And no one was hurt, so I'll talk it over with her when I see her. He took a deep breath. Right? Got any water? He asked. Izuku got up before trotting over to the sink and filling up a paper cup with tap water, bringing it to the American. Thanks. Peter sipped it, feeling the ache in his head fade. Important lesson Midori. Always walk away when a pretty girl is about to feed you something that'll make you loopy, or else dumb stuff happens. Alright, I'll keep that in mind. Did I say anything else? Well, Peter could see the hesitation in his face. Tell you what, I can fill you in a more relaxing place. I still owe it to you to go into the hot springs with ya. Peter rubbed his forehead, remembering this morning before he blacked out. Yeah, you did mention that. Will anyone be in there? Don't think so. Everyone's on their phones or at the pond. Izuku got up. Need help walking there? Peter waved him off, getting off the bed and walking over to where his shoes were. And good, thanks though. He bent down, thankfully able to tie his shoes as he got back up, opening the door and letting Izuku through first. The two walked through the hallway towards the back of the lodge where the hot springs were located. The two walked into the changing room of the springs. Izuku let out a light phew and smiled. You want to go in first? Just wrap a towel around you tightly and just head on in. He grinned. I'll come in when you're settled. Alright, Peter took a deep breath to calm himself. It was just a hot spring. No big deal. Maybe it was big enough if there were others so it wouldn't matter. I'll get to that. He went into one of the stalls, shedding his casual clothing and soon enough, coming out barefoot in a tight white towel. He saw Izuku nod as he went into his own stall, and Peter walked into the men's hot spring. There were stone tiles around the area, a giant wooden wall and several bonsai and yew trees around for anesthetics, with plenty of large rocks along the edge of the spring. Peter walked towards the paved steps, going in as he felt the steam of the spring wash over him, the smell of sulfur all around him. It was definitely odd. He walked into the spring, down the steps as he went in slowly due to the hot water. It was like those jacuzzis at the community pools back home in Queens, but the water felt so much better for some reason. Peter winced before he slinked down, finding a spot at the edge of the spring and resting his back against a large intricate boulder. That Pixie Bob carved all this out, he murmured as he closed his eyes and sighed. He felt his shoulders sag, allowing the strain and stress to fade as he rested his hands on his lap. Oh man, what had he been missing out on? The texture of the smooth floor underneath, with the sulfuric smelly egg in the air, was something else. Yet it made him relaxed, more than he'd felt in a while. He felt his exhaustion just melt away. Liking it, Parker-san. Peter opened an eye at the sound of footsteps and wading water, the orange sky hanging above as he saw Izuku walk in, taking a seat himself near the entry steps. With how steamy it was, Peter wouldn't be able to see much save for Izuku's face. Oh yeah, Peter let out a laugh and a sigh. Back home we have those community pools. That's like the only times I really got anything like this. That and hotel baths. Didn't have a bath back in New York. No. Peter looked up at the orange clouds, hearing the light chirps of the summer cicadas and the chirping of the evening crows. Lived in an apartment mostly, with your Aunt May. Peter blinked, looking back at Izuku who seemed to flinch under his wide-eyed gaze. Why, you mentioned an Aunt May when you were buzzed. Is she your family back home? Peter clenched his jaw, looking to the side as that knot in his chest formed. Why yeah, she sent me to Japan. He lied, feeling the knot in his chest as he shook his head. So, Midoriya. He leaned forward, eager to change this subject yesterday. How has it been going with your quirk? Like, you've come a long way from the kid whose legs looked like beef jerky when we fought those robots. Like you quirk. Well, it's been going great. I've been using the same method you've taught me on the beach after the USJ. Izuku replied with a smile as he lifted up his arm and looked at it. I'm getting better day by day. Peter mused as he leaned back against the rock, sighing through his nose. This wasn't so bad. So, is it always this quiet at hot springs? Sometimes, but most of the time we've been here, Izuku laughed. Everyone else is talking up a storm. It's practically a social hour. Peter mused with a chuckle. With his eyes closed, he was content to hear everything around him. So, Parker-san. Peter opened an eye, seeing Izuku look his way. How's training with you? I only usually hear from Aizawa on how he's having a hard time trying to hit you with his naval laser. Is it tough? Wouldn't be training if it wasn't. It's going fine mostly. Just blindfolded and being forced to fend off and dodge multiple attackers. Blindfolded. What for? For my spider sense. Spider sense. My, precognition. Danger sense. Peter said. With my quirk being spider and all, along with that sixth sense of mine, I gotta be better at using it and treat it like second nature. Still, can't help but feel that I'm hitting a bit of a wall. How so? Well, my spider sense can pick up danger from any impending threats coming in, and I have to keep using it. But, I don't know whether or not it's capped out. In truth, he hadn't had much time to really train and hone his spider sense outside of combat or the odd daily mishap. Training something like that every other day Blinded and deaf to the world was a new experience that he'd never anticipated before. Midoriya rubbed his chin like, it's called spider right. And does your spider sense have to deal with touch? Yeah, I can feel goosebumps and a tingly sensation in my head when I feel something is a threat. And if I remember, spiders tend to have very sensitive hairs on their body, along with sensory organs along their legs. Izuku cupped his chin, and Peter felt his mumble sense tingling. To say nothing of their 8 eyes too. The 5 senses of a spider must be really enhanced for it to be able to evolve and thrive as a species for thousands of years even to this day. Maybe they'll survive when humans are long gone too. Peter was cringing, practically seeing the word salad spewing forth into the spring. Maybe they have a sense of taste too, or something in their thorax and, Midoriya, you're mumbling again. Peter cut him off. What did you write about me in your notebook? Izuku blanched, flinching visibly, and Peter could see his classmate look off to the side in embarrassment. Yes, everyone else in the class too. Yeah. Izuku slumped before Peter let out a little laugh. It figures, guess you need to use that big brain for something, Peter said in good-natured fun, Izuku smiling back. Still, for your spider sense seems to be about touch. Why not maybe experiment with it? Like, well, you told me that I had to spread my quirk throughout my whole body. Well, try using your whole body for spider sense. If that makes any logical sense, Izuku suggested. I mean, not that I'm saying go naked or anything, but maybe since spiders have those organs in their legs, maybe try going barefoot tomorrow. Barefoot. Now that was something Peter didn't consider. I mean, think about it. When we wear socks and shoes, we protect our feet, right? Well, if spider sense is all about touch, then wearing socks and shoes is one big roadblock on the road, or maybe a clog in the pipe. How do I say this? Izuku crossed his arms, thinking as Peter thought with him. He'd never fought or really gone out for Spider-Man things barefoot either. Well, I think I'll try that out tomorrow. Peter showed a toothy grin as he closed his eyes. Thanks, buddy. Izuku seemed to shine, resting in the bath. Anytime. The next day, Peter looked around, seeing his new combatants for the day. Their 13th day at the camp, and he was getting awfully familiar with Aoyama's lasers and how much of a punch they packed. He seemed to be increasing the stopping power too. They stood in the clearing. What was once completely green with grass was now muddled with smoothed over earth thanks to the craters Pixie Bob would cover up when training was done. My tail's been itching to hit something soft. And Kirishima is anything but. Ajiro smirked. You should have seen him when we watched move his back at Yaoyorozu's. He cried a bit during Neverending Story. Peter replied back. Peter remembered his conversation with Izuku yesterday and knelt down to the surprise of his training partners. He took off his shoes and socks, stuffing the latter in his shoes and tossing them across the clearing as he reached for the blindfold, earmuffs, or blind muffs, earfolds, blindfold muffs. There we go. Peter mused mentally. Shall we? He asked, seeing Aizawa looking on past the clearing, hands in his pockets. Peter put on his bandana, feeling the mugginess of the humid overcast day bearing down on him as he tapped on his muffs. He felt them tighten up along with the bandana, leaving him in silent darkness. Takoyami would like this, I bet, he added as he took a deep breath and took a step forward on his bare foot. Suddenly, he felt goosebumps, his hair on end. Pony hopped off the tree, making it shake, and she vanished for an instant. Aoyama ran, shifting to his right to get into position to fire. Ajiro broke out into a run. Peter took a deep breath. Then he dodged the tail swipe, grabbing Ajiro's leg and tossing him aside as he felt a spark of white go off above him. He leapt, avoiding Pony's horns and the thick white beam that was Aoyama's laser blasting towards him. Peter contorted like a pole jumper, avoiding the laser as he came down onto his hand and feet, and then dodged left, avoiding a spinning axe tail strike to the ground. The blow was followed by the sparks of more horns being fired. The goosebumps on end. His body was practically alight with senses he'd never felt before as he moved in on Ajiro, shoving him hard and sending him flying several feet across the clearing. He then jumped right, avoiding another laser blast as he could sense Aoyama running sideways as best he could, trying to hit Peter on the move. He perceived a horn coming in fast, blunt end first, and he managed to grab it with his hand and chuck it back. Oh, Tsunotori yelped, the horn grazing her arm as she used her free spare horn to steady herself. That's new. Did we activate nightmare mode? Ajiro exclaimed in surprise, trying to rush in on Peter, but he wisely backstepped. Shouta's eyes were focused on Parker. He'd watched him undergo this method of training before during this camp. but Parker always seemed to find a way to drop his guard when under duress like this. Sure, he would know where to dodge to avoid the enemy's strikes, but he would always get pestered by Aizawa and Tsunotori to the point that Ajiro would be able to land a good tail shot with the not-instant kill jelly on his tail, as heroes coordinating against a tough enemy should. But now, it was as if Parker could see everything around him as he sidestepped Tsunotori, sending in 2 extra horns to harass and dive in at him, all while Ajiro launched kicks and tail whips. Aizawa was now doing sidesteps left and right as to harass Parker with his laser beams, and Peter was dodging them nimbly, ducking a tail whip and rolling over with an explosive jump that sent dirt flying to avoid more horns. He rolled to his feet, and Shouta could see the grimace on Parker's face, looking along Parker's dusty arm and seeing the reason why. Those goosebumps were noticeable from his eyeglass. To experience those in fighting, a few seconds the body was used to, but to keep it up for minutes on end. Sensory overload was possible in other quirks. It might very well be a factor here. Aizawa was then offered 3 horns for Tsunotori as the girl got onto the ground, going on all fours with a horn circling about her, the horns on her head regrowing. Aizawa was given 2 horns to step on, and 1 to steady himself with his hand. Outside the box, untrained, but something to throw Parker off. Ajiro let out a soft roar as he charged, and Tsunotori did so too in practically a gallop, the look of surprise on Parker's face palpable as he had to jump to avoid a blue laser blasting on his position from on high. Time for a lil spray and pray, Tsunotori belted out in English, and instead of deftly controlling some horns as if they were remote weapons, the girl began to fire them out in a straight line like a gun. Shouta raised an eyebrow. Must have developed that skill under Vlad. Parker was put on the retreat, running and sidestepping to avoid the fast-moving machine gun horn girl and the floating flying laser boy. Ajiro was on Parker's tail, unleashing roundhouse tail whips and kicks in the hopes of catching him. Yet despite it all, the American boy continued to dodge and jump away, even though some horns wound up tagging him. Tsunotori stopped and rubbed her head, wincing as Shouta saw blood leak down her crown. Must be irritating her scalp immensely. The body and the quirk would adapt and get used to it. Man, I wish I kept my script. Obviously appearances needed to be kept up, but Toshinori still felt a little apprehensive when it came to teaching more than one student. Or, more accurately, teaching anyone. But that was a problem of his, hardly something that the children needed to suffer for, which led to young Midoriya, Sato, and Kaibara standing in front of him looking expectant. Alright, now, when it comes to power-type quirks there's one thing that you need to keep in mind. Power? Sato offered. Pretty sure we'd have everything down if that was all that we needed, Kaibara said wryly. Well, I wasn't going to say it like that, Toshinori mumbled. But yes, young Kaibara has the right of it. If all heroes had to do in order to be some of the top-ranked quirks was hit really hard, it wouldn't be difficult for anyone to go up the rankings. But, off the top of my head, the only one with a power-type quirk that really fits the bill of throwing out power is All Might. And you don't think that he got to be number 1 by just throwing random punches all day, do you? Sato looked a bit nervous while a small smugness overtook Kaibara, and young Midoriya was taking notes. Frankly, he shouldn't be surprised. So how does he do it? Kaibara asked. All Might, Toshinori asked, faking obliviousness. Well, he does the same thing that I'm sure that you 3 will get the chance to do. Instantly, all 3 of the students' attention focused on him. He takes all the power of his quirk, and he does the hard thing. He focuses it. Toshinori held up his finger in comparison. And not in the way that he charges something up, more that he takes that power, and he forces it to be in only the area of his fist. He flicks his finger in the air for a small demonstration, though nothing really came of it. Imagine that, the power in his entire body, but only allowed to be released towards a single point. The space is compressed, and the explosive power is far more than if he simply just let it out everywhere. Like Midoriya when he flicks his finger, Sato asked, making both Toshinori and Midoriya flinch. Really close to the bullseye there, young Sato. He thought. Why yeah, something like that, the blonde man said while rubbing the back of his head. But, like every quirk is different, everyone here has a different way of finding that focus. Kaibara, your drills have an end point, don't they? Yeah, my fingers, or the tips of my toes if I can. Can you make one part of the drill go faster than the others? Toshinori asked. Because if your fingers and the rest of your arm is accelerating, then all the more power they'll have. Kaibara's eyes widened, and Toshinori gestured to a nearby tree. Start getting a feel for it against the tree, don't go too overboard. The boy nodded and happily walked over to the tree, the sounds of a drill filling the air right behind him. As for you two, Toshinori said, you both have strength augmentation quirks. But the difference in focus comes with how you unleash your quirks. Sato, how much sugar do you need to activate your quirk? A few grams. Well, how about take less, get more bang for your buck without sacrificing all of your head? I'll try. Do, Yagi said, gently patting him on the shoulder. And don't worry, this is just the start. You'll be up there hitting with the big leagues soon enough. That got an eager smile out of the boy, leaving Yagi alone with his successor, if only for a moment. As for you, the main focus is getting your body set up to handle any backlash, and redirect anything that you need to go through. Any questions? Yes, Midoriya said, quickly flipping through his notebook. The boy started mumbling up a storm. Though, more to the point, how did he get multiple pages out of that short explanation? Pull, Momo ordered, and Asui obliged, using her tongue to twirl a discus up in the air with a ribbit. Aiming towards the stone pillar with a placed bullseye, she aimed as the discus came in front of the target, and fired, tossing it aside as her stomach glowed again, as did her calf, shards of the disc falling to the ground. Pull, Momo pulled out the crossbow, bow loaded as Asui repeated the motion. The girl grunting with multiple weighted bracers about her body. The dark green-haired girl was getting a full body workout and using her tongue to better aim projectiles. Momo aimed, fired, and rolled her eyes when the arrow missed its mark. She set the crossbow aside, grabbing some bread and bringing it to her lips. You still going strong, Asui? She asked, munching on the white bread, seeing plenty of loaves still in their plastic wrapping as she could hear explosions and yells throughout the area. I can keep going, Ribbit, Asui replied. Oh, and call me Tsu. Sorry, let's do our best. Flashing a small smile, Momo finished her snack and brought her hand to her stomach as it glowed, pulling out a shotgun. She felt the disc she conjured on her leg be taken. Pull, Ribbit. Asui aimed, leapt and twirled, and Momo brought the shotgun to bear, firing it and feeling satisfied upon seeing the disc explode into shards. She set it aside, right on top of a pile of other guns she had been conjuring. Die, Bakugo roared, and finally, he burst through the stone wall and came out the other end, panting as he was covered in dirt and dust. Behind him, vines were creeping forth to keep the tunnel he made with his explosions stable. Finally, Shizaki had been with him all day on loan from Class B while keeping the ceiling above him from collapsing, but at least he didn't have to hear her nagging at him swearing. Blasting through all that stone and rock but in a controlled fashion was annoying as hell. He couldn't cut loose or he'd make it too unstable, too weak, and he couldn't make progress. Had to find that perfect middle ground. Nicely done, Bakugo, Tiger exclaimed, standing atop a small mound overseeing his district. Bakugo saw Dinaface hunched over by the woods, hands over his mouth as he seemed to be talking with the ground. Shall we move on to the next plateau, Bakugo-san? Shizaki spoke over the walkie-talkie Tiger had lent them. The ash blonde picked it up. I'll meet you there. He pocketed it, walking over as he saw Tiger moving towards Dinaface as well. Come now, Kota. What's wrong? Command them. I want to see. Bring me my sandwich. Tiger barked, getting down close to a flustered and scared silly Dinaface. There seemed to be a bento box with said sandwich inside in plastic wrap off several meters away. He looked pale too, and Bakugo could saw why. He was over an anthill of sorts. Ants. He was scared of goddamn ants. He'd heard of phobias before, but this was ridiculous. Man up, dinosaur. He hollered from his place at the mouth of the hole he'd dug. Dinaface jumped, like a deer in the headlights as he looked up towards him. Bakugo thrust his hands upwards and with several extremely loud blasts into the air. Every bird even remotely close by took to the skies and flew off. Dinaface gulped, looking sick. He grit his teeth, crossing his arms ready to shout some more at the goddamn animal whisperer before his eyes caught a crackle of green lightning through the trees. The harsh words lodged in his throat, suddenly burning there before he swallowed them down. You're not always gonna have fucking birds, he growled instead. Use what you've got. He turned, beginning to march away and pace restlessly, clenching and unclenching his fists to try and shake the pain out of them. The distant sounds of others training reaching his ears, still seeing the crackle of green lightning distantly through the gloom of the forest. He could just make out Frog racing against him too. TCH, GotHimNet. The radio at his side crackled to life. Please don't take the Lord's name in vain, he snarled, not having realized it was on an open channel before he snatched it from his belt and screamed into it. I'll do whatever I goddamn want. Bakugo pocketed it when he heard her sigh. That's it, Kota. You're making them move upon command. Blubber through those tears, young man. Rule the kingdom of the underground with your words, he heard Tiger exclaim. Bakugo didn't react, going down the trail and seeing the other tall plateau in the distance that he will need to blast through once more. One skill Aizawa had, if nothing else, was his ability to calmly and rationally think about a situation, mainly deciding how best to approach it. Sometimes it required subtlety, sometimes it needed indirect methods. Sometimes, rarely, the problem could be ignored entirely and it would resolve itself in time. And in others it was best to approach the issue head-on. Towards the end of the day, after the students began to make their way towards the dining area to start prepping their food, Aizawa spoke as the students began to walk past him. "Parker, a moment." Peter cocked an eyebrow. The other students looked their way but Aizawa waved them off, each of them turning and leaving after a moment. Finally, assured of some semblance of privacy, Aizawa spoke. "I will be honest with you, I hope you'll return the favor." The American didn't look at all comfortable. "You don't trust me, do you?" Peter shifted from foot to foot while averting his gaze. His discomfort was a pointed, palpable thing. Then, quietly, he seemed to brace himself, squaring his shoulders. "You haven't exactly given me any reason to trust you." Then he shrugged. "Hell, you've done everything to make me not trust you much at all." Aizawa nodded. "What I did out of concern. I'm your teacher. Concern of me." Peter responded, tone low. "Not for me." "You're not wrong." He sighed, closing his eyes. "But that was then, this is now. Nothing's changed." The boy argued. "I have answers. Context." He explained easily. "The picture changes, the response changes with it." Parker looked at him pointedly. "You said it, not me." Aizawa felt himself stiffen a bit, not expecting the deft use of his own words against him so swiftly. Parker's eyes were sharp now, no longer averting his eyes but facing Aizawa fully with a soft glare. He was on his guard, completely so. The teacher felt himself take a deep breath and quietly sigh through his nostrils. His red eyes, no longer hard or annoyed, looked back at his student. "You're my student," he said matter-of-factly, hands stuffed into his pockets as he held Peter's gaze. "I would like to set things right, if you'd allow that." He meant it too, his voice softening somewhat. Peter worked his jaw, looking to the side as he frowned. "That will take a while." And by the tone of his voice, by no means a guarantee. Aizawa offered another nod. "Fair. I won't keep you any further." He patted Peter on the shoulder and walked past. With a nearly tangible uncoiling of tight muscles, Peter relaxed minutely, turning quickly and marching away. He let out a sigh and turned to join his classmates. Hopefully they had some leftover teriyaki meatballs. How many days had it been since those losers have been here? Kota lost track. It was starting to become irritating that he couldn't just have things go back to where they once were. He flipped through some of the channels in the TV lounge, head against a couch cushion as he heard the sounds of those idiots yelling outside. Couldn't their throats get hoarse and just have them be quiet already? That one stupid-looking one who talked to birds didn't seem to be able to talk now. They should follow his example. Anime, sales show, news channel, and more explosions, gunfire, yelling, and the sounds of glaciers being destroyed echoed as Kota growled and looked out the window. He looked out, seeing what looks like a mountain of ice being assaulted by the quirks of those other idiots en masse. "I hate this," he uttered, and the brown-haired boy got up from the couch and turned off the TV, grabbing his phone and walking out of the TV lounge, through the lodge and out the side door. He needed fresh air. His favorite place should do. He decided to go there for a bit and then head back for lunch. He walked into the woods as he spotted his favorite little mountain to hang out. It was clear blue skies today, all in front of him. His favorite lookout should do. Kota began his walk, remembering to follow the trail markers he had set during his time here. Kota never looked behind him though, at the massive wave of dark clouds rumbling in from beyond the mountains to the south. "Everyone," said Mandalay within Shouta's head. The shaggy-haired man perked up, looking towards the direction of the lodge. Before him, he saw Bakugo, Yaoyorozu, Kirishima, and Midoriya stop in their four-pronged assault on the giant glacier Todoroki was sprouting, and noticed the others looking too. They had been working out in the cloudy, overcast days so far, yet it seemed that the storm had finally approached. A tropical storm is about to pass through here. It's the remnants of Typhoon Eris, now Tropical Storm Eris. Eraserhead. Vlad King, I suggest you bring all of your students inside, as we planned. Shouta let a sigh escape his nostrils. He wanted to have his students train in some inclement weather as to get them prepared. But that was one of the conditions the Pussycats gave him when he suggested this camp, given how it would coincide with typhoon season. In the event of a tropical storm or, if it got deep enough inland, a typhoon, the camp would be postponed. All right. He turned towards the rest of his students, seeing the physical users pausing in their workout with Tiger. "Everyone, we're heading back inside for the lodge. Wash up and we'll reconvene in the mess hall." Of course, that meant it would be time for lectures too. He got his phone out and tapped on the Yoruha app. Shouta looked around, seeing everyone head back inside as the rain was beginning to pick up, alongside the wind too. he spotted Parker, Asui, Takoyami, and Aoyama running in from their clearing towards the lodge too. Before long, he was back inside, seeing all of his students, wet and tired from the day training, all gathered inside, walking towards the mess hall. He followed them in, seeing them all sit and talk amongst themselves. Alright, normally I would prefer us doing our exercises through some rain, but the storm approaching is the remnants of a typhoon coming from the Pacific. Shouta elaborated as he looked over at his class. While doing hero work during a storm is common, it's best if we do one that emulates those conditions in the USJ than in a real one. As such, we'll cut training short for today and maybe tomorrow if need be. He could hear some murmurs, including some excited ones from Ashido and Kaminari. To compensate, we will be doing lectures instead. And cue the groans from half the class. It's late in the day, however, so wash up and make your dinner. We'll do lectures tomorrow. And his phone rang as he pulled it out and answered it, a little peeved. Yes, I got all my students in, Vlad said over the phone. Shouta noticed Yagi walk into the room right after, a little drenched but fine nevertheless. Did you bring your class in? Yeah, good to know. And has anyone seen Kota? Said a shrill voice that made Shouta wince in his head. That was Mandalay. Going by the rest of his class, they too cringed and rubbed their heads. Can't she keep it down? Zero complained. The fuck's a Kota? Bakugo uttered. Shouta noticed Shoji and Parker perk up and they turned, seeing Pixie Bob in the doorway, the look in her eyes a little frantic. Shouta pocketed his phone. Has anyone here seen Kota? Little kid, brown hair with a hat. Pixie Bob asked. You mean the kid who sometimes watches us? Todoroki asked. More like glare at us. Ashido uttered. We haven't seen him. We just got in here. Pixie Bob. Uraraka stood up. Is Kota gone? Yes. Mandalay called him down for dinner with us but he didn't respond. We checked on his bedroom and he's gone. Pixie Bob looked at Shouta. Have you seen him? No. Shouta stepped up, a little urgency seeping in under his stoic complexion. Why would that kid go missing during a storm? Shit. Pixie Bob placed her gloved hand on her headpiece. Mandalay, he's not in here and class A hasn't seen him. I just talked to class B when they were coming in. They didn't see him either. Tiger spoke over the headpiece, muffled as it was by her glove paw as the blonde woman's face grimaced. The winds outside were beginning to howl too. Is there anything we can do to help? Midoriya asked from his spot besides Parker and Todoroki. No, you're all staying here, Shouta sternly said, facing the class as Yagi looked anxious, walking over to his side. This is a search and rescue operation during tumultuous weather. We came here to this camp to hone and enhance your quirks and bodies, not send you out on a dangerous mission. But a child needs saving, sensei. Ida spoke up. Surely there must be something we can do. My answer is no. Look, I understand you want to help, but leave this to us. You're not heroes yet. This isn't a controlled environment like the USJ. Any number of problems can crop up and then we'll be worse off. Maybe if this was not during a storm I can rely on you all, but outside there is a tropical storm bearing down on us that has wind speeds from 60 to 100 kilometers per hour. He turned towards Yaoyorozu, who had been sitting with Jiru. Yaoyorozu, keep the class in line. Parker, support her. You are the representatives after all. Wash up, get dressed, make dinner. Training for the day is over. He then turned to Yagi. Yagi-san, can I trust you to watch over Class and B? He turned, walking out and away, Yagi following. Understood, sensei. Yaoyorozu spoke up, her face neutral as Parker nodded. When they made some distance, Shouta felt a hand on his shoulder. Let me go out there, Yagi said. I can find the kid and... Not happening. Shouta groused as he could hear the panicked sounds of Mandalay with her team in their central lounge. If you do, then your identity will be compromised. Shouta rounded on him, his red eyes glaring into Yagi's dark blue. The students will figure it out. And that's not even going into the ramifications of society knowing of your time limit as All Might. It'll make villains more emboldened than ever. We can't risk that, he whispered. Besides, for all we know, Kota just went on a stroll and got lost. Besides, Pixie Bob knows this national park like the back of her hand. Yagi took a deep breath, rubbing his nose. You and Sir would get along too well. HNN. Shouta rolled his eyes before turning and walking towards the central lounge where the pussycats were. Vlad was present too. Kendo is keeping Class B in line for now. Vlad spoke. What's the plan here? I've found him, Ragdoll said, her eyes glowing as her quirk was at work. Mandalay, he's at some cliff in the north. Those cliffs. When did he get there? Mandalay asked, eyes wide as Shouta heard the windows rattle from the wind. He could hear the rain beginning to pour too. So that's his favorite little hideaway, huh? Pixie Bob mused aloud. Don't know, but we have to get to him now. Tiger spoke. We got the Jaguar tank. The muscular crossdresser elaborated. Witches. Vlad quirked an eyebrow. Retrofitted vehicle for off-road travel. Pixie Bob said. I clear the ground ahead by moving any debris and rubble aside. Tiger drives, Ragdoll searches, and Mandalay talks to the people in need of rescuing. Kota, listen to me. Just stay where you are and we'll come get you all right. Mandalay said, hand to her head. Stay in that cave close by and stay warm. We'll save your nephew Mandalay. Shouta spoke up. Vlad, you coming? Of course. I can trust Kendo to manage my class. Yagi, can you do double duty? He asked, looking at the skeletal man. Why yes, of course. Let's get going. Tiger grabbed a set of keys as Ragdoll got up from the couch, walking with her 2 heroine comrades out the door. A label above the doorway saying garage. Kota's lookout is 10 kilometers or so away. We need to move before the storm gets worse. Thanks for giving us some extra hands, Eraser. Ragdoll looked back. Just part of the job. Shouta followed the group into the garage, looking at his phone to ensure it was at full charge. He saw the Jaguar tank, a massively armored 6-wheeler vehicle designed for any and all terrain with a leopard-spotted aesthetic, and the front of the vehicle had a stretched-out Jaguar's maw with the eyes acting as headlights. Corny, but it fit their theme. Get in, Tiger yelled out from the driver's seat as Shouta sat in the 3rd row with Vlad. Mandalay was in the front with Tiger, while Pixie Bob sat in the middle row with Ragdoll. Ragdoll, lead the way. It's his favorite spot, which is south from here, she said as the garage door began to open, the shaggy-haired man buckling his seatbelt. The door opened, revealing the pouring rain as Tiger punched it. Pixie Bob tapped on some controls as her seat tilted sideways as Shouta blinked. He saw Vlad get some rain coming in from the open section, him sputtering as Shouta fought down an urge to snigger. A quake from the ground came before a good 200 or so meters of ground parted the trees, moving them aside without dislodging their roots as fresh muddy earth created the dirt road they needed. The Jaguar tank barreled through the mud like a duck to water. Kota, if you can hear me, just stay in the cave by your lookout, all right, Fanchino said in his head. Don't move. We're coming to you. Kota nodded, knowing that his answer would not reach his aunt, but doing so on reflex. He sat behind a massive rock within a cavern on the cliff. The rock helped shield him from the strong winds and rain, but the cold and the spray of water coming in didn't help as he hugged his knees tightly. Why did those stupid hero wannabes come here? Why did that stupid storm have to come in? Why did bad things keep happening to him? First with mommy and daddy and now the cry. Kota perked up, lifting his head as he could hear what sounded like squawking going on. He spotted something dark enter the cave, but thanks to his positioning being by the rock, the massive black thing did not spot him. What followed the thing in was 2 smaller squawking bear cubs. Kota's heart froze, seeing what was at the end of the cave. A giant mother black bear as her cubs seemed to have noticed him, letting out barks and squawks as they approached him, seemingly friendly and curious. Gee, go away. Kota moved away, his hands spraying water courtesy of his quirk. One of the streams seemed to have caught one of them in the eye as Kota took in a sharp intake of breath. He didn't mean to fire off his water gun like that. It was an accident. He heard a roar, seeing the mother bear approach as he paled and backed out of the cave, the wind staggering him as he fell on his backside, slipping on the wet earth. The mother bear seemed to roar, and Kota saw its eyes as lightning flashed and thunder boomed. The bestial panting and the snarling teeth. Kota got up and backed off. I am leaving, okay. He turned tail, running as fast as he could before he heard the bear roar and the thundering footsteps of the beast. He ran as hard as he could, but Kota was only 10. He could never outrun an angry mother bear. Someone, anyone, help me, Kota yelled, feeling it get closer and closer as he continued to run, fear and terror striking his heart as he closed his eyes, waiting for the bear's jaws. He heard a grunt and a pained roar as Kota fell to the ground, slipping as his hat came flying off, and he hit his head on something hard as he looked back, seeing some mass on top of the mother bear, the beast roaring in agony before the figure jumped off. He saw something in the figure's hand retract as the figure landed, stowing it in its cloak, before the beast charged once more, and the figure, in a perfect sword draw, unsheathed the blade. Not a katana, but some kind of sword in one quick draw motion, striking the stone wall in the act and then coming down on the bear. The bear let out a pained grunt before it stumbled past the figure, and Kota saw something fall off the bear as she lost her balance. Her right forepaw detached and the bear yowled in shocked pain before turning and hobbling away as fast as it could, red pooling out from the stump as the figure rose back up, swung its sword to the side, and brought a arm clad in black leather up to wipe away the blade before sheathing in its cloak. The figure turned, and as lightning flashed, Kota saw the figure's face, or rather, the mask, featureless and black, save for 2 eye holes, one of them glowing violet. Kota panicked, backing away as he felt something warm drip down his head as his vision began to swim. Did he hit his head? It really hurt. The figure approached, and the next thing he knew he was being picked up and carried. He was set down, gently against the rock back in the cave as his eyes were fighting the urge to stay awake. He could have sworn he heard the cubs crying out and running past too. Mask Guy got some kind of cloth or kerchief, dabbing his head before reaching into its cloak, grabbing something as Kota breathed in and out. Who are you? He saw the person grab something and sprayed it on his head. Kota's head stung lightly, him wincing as he tried to bat it away before the figure stood up. He heard the sound of some rocks exploding over the wind, rain, and the thunder as the figure bolted, leaving the cave and running left. They went up a hill towards the slope. Someone saved him. They just came and left. I should have asked for a name, Kota thought as he sat up. Thank you very much, he called out over the wind and rain. He heard the thunder roar and saw lightning flash. The pain in his head was fading too as he made sure to stay awake. Aunt Shino and Auntie Ruko told him about those kinds of wilderness and safety tips. When hit on the head, stay awake until help arrives. No matter what, he's right up there. Ragdoll spoke over the truck's noisy passage as Shouta held on. The path behind them just one big dirt road with trees pushed to the side. Hang on Kota-kun, Pixie Bob called out as she leaned out of her port in the Jagwa tank, slamming her paws against the ground as the very earth began to rise up into a platform, leading towards the cliff. Through the flash of thunder and lightning, Shouta was able to make out a cave mouth to the side, with some trees at the very top of the mountain. Mandalay was quiet in front of Shouta, no doubt worried for her nephew. We're here. Tiger got to the top of the slope and turned the vehicle as it parallel parked. The occupants inside held on, and the Jagwa tank came to a stop. Kota, Mandalay called out, getting out of the tank, right into the rain and wind as she ran along the cliff. Shouta got out after her, and he noticed something right by his shoe that made him quirk an eyebrow. The forearm of a bear. Kota-kun, Kota-kun. Pixie Bob followed with Vlad departing soon after. Shouta looked up, through the wind and rain and saw Mandalay holding Kota. It's okay baby, Aunt Shino's here. I'm here, she uttered. Auntie, Shouta could barely hear him mutter as he hugged her back, the two drenched in mud and water. Something caught his eye though. Grabbing his spyglass, Shouta extended it and brought it to his eye. Hey, Eraser, we got the kid. We can take off now, Vlad said as he walked around the vehicle. What are you look? He saw it. With his spyglass, he could see it. The hunched-over corpse of a massive bear, with two cubs by its side pushing and prodding it. He looked down at the stump where the bear's arm should have been. Mandalay, he said, seeing her carry the boy back to the tank as she looked up. What's up Eraser he as she noticed the limb by his foot. What the? Put him in the car. If any of you know first aid, administer it. Shouta ordered as he walked off, feeling the biting cold of the wind and rain. He ignored the others' calls to return. Or rather they were drowned out. He made out Mandalay saying something about a bare arm as Shouta brought his goggles over his eyes for protection. He made it up the slope and into the woods, and there he saw the bear hunched over as the cubs scurried away, crying in fear at the sight of him. He approached, grabbing his phone and activating the flashlight as he walked around the bear. There, he found the wound, kneeling down and the cut was clean, way too clean. He began to take photos with the flash on his phone. He pocketed the phone, trotting back to the vehicle as he saw everyone save Pixie Bob loaded back in. He took additional photos of the arm as well before coming inside, seeing Kota sitting in front of him with Mandalay. What was that about, Aizawa? Vlad asked. The arm. Kota, Shouta spoke out as he heard the rumble of earth beneath him. He looked at the kid. Did someone kill that bear? Aizawa, he's been through a storm and God knows what, let him be. Vlad urged. Ananngh. What? Kota asked, looking back at the shaggy-haired man. Shouta inspected him. A little dazed, possible concussion but none worse for wear. Bad and soaked to the bone. Aizawa, Mandalay spoke. What is it? Someone or something killed that bear, and the wound is fresh, otherwise its cubs wouldn't be near their mother's corpse. Shouta showed her the phone and the pictures he took. He saw Kota perk up on seeing the images. Tell me, do you know anything about this? Why yeah, I do. Shouta felt his heart tighten. Someone in a cloak and some sword. They came out of nowhere when the bear found me and was about to attack me and they had a mask too and he winced. I'm hungry. I'll cook up your favorite stew when we get back to the lodge. Kota, rest at ease. Tiger said from the driver's seat. Cloak, sword, mask. Shouta, drenched in the rain as he pushed his hair back, looked up at the cliff face, seeing the edge about a good 20 meters above. Pixie Bob, I need a lift. He called out. Seriously, we're in a tropical storm. Ragdoll exclaimed. I'll keep it fast, promise, Shouta urged, walking around and seeing a wet Pixie Bob looking back. Ugh, fine, but hurry it up. "I'm soaked here," Pixie Bob complained, trotting across the stone ground and going to the wall. With one touch of her paw, the cliff began to morph and shatter, making a stairway leading up to the top. Shouter ran up the new feature. "A little thanks would be nice," Pixie Bob cried out from behind. He got a big view of the valley. Big, wide, and drenched with rain as he could see the trees sway thanks to the wind. Nothing, no aircraft, no sign of the lodge in this storm. He trotted down the stone stairs and then back into the car as he climbed into the back, soaked. "The moment we get back to the lodge, we need to have a meeting," Shouta stated, crossing his arms as he leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes to rest. They had arrived back a half hour ago and had dried off, the ones being exposed to the elements changing into new clothes. Shouta was seated on a chair, Pixie Bob and Ragdoll on the couch in front of him. He saw that Yagi had taken another chair, and Tiger was leaning against the fireplace as it cracked and popped. The wind and rain outside intensified, the windows rattling lightly. The students were busy eating their dinner, and he saw Mandalay walk on in, locking the door behind her. "Okay, Kota is asleep and has some medication in him. By tomorrow, he should be good as new," Mandalay sighed, walking over and taking her seat by Pixie Bob, the brunette almost crumpling before she sniffed. "Oh, thank God," she uttered, letting her emotions show as her guard dropped. Pixie Bob instantly hugged her. Ragdoll had a hand on the brown-haired woman's thigh, and Tiger walked over, his big hand on her shoulder as all the pussycats gave support to their comrade. "Thank goodness indeed." Yagi spoke. "So, Eraser, why did you call all of us for a meeting? Something to do with that bare arm, right?" Tiger asked, Mandalay taking deep breaths to calm down. She took some Kleenex offered to her by Ragdoll. "Yes." Shouta leaned forward. "Kota said that someone wearing a mask and cloak wielding some kind of sword saved him from a bear attack. The proximity of the attack, however, raises a distinct possibility that we were being watched." "Watched? Like spied on?" Yagi asked, eyes wide. "You think it's the League of Villains?" Vlad spoke up, urgency in his voice. "I don't know," Shouta muttered, hand over his chin as he stewed in thought. "The savior was strong enough to sever a fully grown bear's arm off in one strike. The wound is too clean." He took out his phone, showing pictures as he handed it to Yagi, the skeletal man grimacing at the sight as he passed it to Ragdoll and the others on the couch. "So someone strong enough to sever a bare arm, yet didn't stick around to stay with the boy they just saved." Yagi mused aloud. "That doesn't fit the League's mo." "Yeah," Ragdoll spoke aloud. "From what I've read, the League usually goes for populated areas where they can do the most damage. At least that's what I can gather from Villain Analytics Hour on TV." "Exactly. There's only 2 days of this camp left," Shouta muttered. "This storm doesn't seem to be going anywhere, so we'll stick to lectures and keep the students here in the lodge. No more outdoor training. We should inform Principal Nezu on this immediately." Vlad spoke up. "We have 2 possibilities." Shouta spoke. "Some unknown party, or the League. That's another question mark on who this man is. The 2 known members of the League of Villains don't use swords, nor would they go out of their way to save a child from a bear attack. Doesn't fit Shigaraki Tamura's mo." But either way, he looked up, his red eyes narrowed. "Problematic. We need to stay on guard." Yagi spoke, his hands clasped, and Shouta turned, seeing the hard look in the skeletal symbol of Peace's eyes. "If it really is the League of Villains, we won't let them harm our students again. Ever." Vlad nodded, arms crossed. "Well said, assuming it is. But again, if they knew where we were, how come Namu aren't swarming this place?" Tiger asked. "Because given the League's 2 attacks, they want to draw as much bloodshed as possible and shock the nation. Attacking a lodge and the children inside should do it. We stay on guard and hold lectures," Shouta said as he stood up. "Keep the students inside for now and wait for the storm to blow over in the next 2 days. After that, we head back to Tokyo. I'll call Nezu about this tonight." He looked across the room. "Eat and rest up. I'll take the first evening watch." He turned towards Vlad. "I'll wake you around 3 in the morning and you cover until morning." "Fine by me." Vlad nodded before Shouta left the room, collecting his phone as he went. He let out a big sigh. "Aizawa," he stopped, looking back at Mandalay who was gazing his way. "Kota mentioned something else when I took him to the infirmary." The man was silent, waiting for her to continue. "When the masked figure saved him, Kota mentioned he felt something spray on his head wound. I checked it when we got there and it scabbed up very fast. I mean, it could just be some kind of healing spray, but..." Shouta cocked an eyebrow and took a deep breath. "I'll do some forensics." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "One more errand to do before bed, it seems." The life of a detective. The sound of typing had long since faded into the background. Frankly, the stares that Yu was getting from some of her coworkers was enough to distract her more than her work. report after report on the current situations around the wards of Tokyo from the different internship grades. They all needed to get finished, and there was plenty of backlog to keep her focused for a while. She reached for her cup, only to frown when no coffee came to her. In the corner of her eye, another cup approached, held by a brown set of fingers. "Another cup?" Kamui asked. You flashed him a small smile before taking the offered cup. "Thanks, figured you should be rewarded," Kamui said. "You haven't stopped working on reports since you came in." "Yeah," you murmured, her fingers going back to the keyboard. "Need to get all of this done. I've got some paperwork that I need to get to after this." "Homework?" Kamui asked, taking a sip of his own drink. You shrugged. "Sort of." She paused. "Ward needs to talk to someone." Kamui raised an eyebrow. "Professionally." There's a small widening of eyes behind the wooden mask. "Well, I hope things work out for you." "Thanks," you said, "but I was honestly hoping that would convince you to do this stuff for me." Kamui rolled his eyes. "Just keep up the pace you're going at, and I'm sure you'll get everything figured out." "Slave driver," you muttered, giving the hero a tiny chuckle as he headed out, which left you looking at the computer screen and the scribbled note just under it. She was almost ready to call. Hopefully it would be worth it. Part of her was scared on how she might react or handle things. She remembered seeing a counselor when she was in foster care as a child, but a shrink. How would Peter react? And what if other people found out too? Her firm might hire him without a second thought, but she didn't want Peter to settle for being a hero in Nusutafu Ward. He deserved bigger, more noteworthy pastures. Shinjuku, Korisanto, Korira, the best wards. It was the least she could do. You scratched under her domino mask, looking up at the ceiling as she heard the rain pour outside. The edge of tropical depression Eris had been over Tokyo for most of the day, but it'd be gone by tomorrow, save for southern Honshu where Peter and his class were at. "Okay, need to check with him on what his plans will be when he gets back," Hugh muttered, before seeing an alert on her computer. "Chase in progress, Sarapo Street and approaching Parupa Ave." She got up, and Mount Lady trotted down the hallway to the outside. Hunting some thugs should clear her mind a little, even if the rain kinda sucked. The storm was there, the rain coming down, but the worst had passed, the winds being moderate in speed and the deluge more tolerable. Peter loaded his suitcase into the lower area, shouldering his backpack as he looked back at the other students as they were busy either loading their belongings or saying their goodbyes to the wild pussycats, who were under the awning outside the lodge. Uraraka was hugging Pixie Bob and chatting up a storm as Tiger laughed. Mandalay looked at ease, Ragdoll having a big grin as usual, and that kid, Kota, was by his aunt's side minus his hat, but he had a bandage on his head. He had a more neutral expression on his face, that scowl of his gone. "We're gonna miss you kittens," Ragdoll yelled. "Was kinda nice not to do kitchen duty for a while, Nyahaha. I can see the eye of the tiger in many of you." Tiger flexed, showing off his paw. "You have all grown spectacularly. We'll definitely hand out an invite to you, Uraraka," Pixie Bob exclaimed. "Best of luck on your provisional exams." "Thanks," the brunette said bashfully, pumping her fists up and down. "I'll do my best. Take care, everyone." Mandalay waved as Peter waved back, smiling lightly. The pussycats were pretty cool, cat-like gimmick notwithstanding. As much as doing work in the mountainside sounded nice, Peter, it just didn't feel like home there. He preferred the concrete jungle himself. "We will," Momo called out. "Everyone, stand," Ida called out as Peter stood up. "In bow," he followed with his classmates, seeing Bakugo give the slightest dissent of the entire class. "Thank you very much for taking us in. We learned a lot under you all," Izuku said as he got onto the bus, everyone now beginning to file in. "Yeah, my hardening is 3 times harder now, I can feel it," Kirishima shouted. "I can shoot more of my laser without getting a tummy ache either." Aoyama posed. Mandalay let out a soft laugh, as did her comrades as she looked down at her nephew. Aizawa then walked past, dragging his own luggage. "Let's get moving, unless you want to be in the cold," Aizawa drawled as Peter filed into the bus, a finger readjusting his earpiece. "Well, that ought to take care of that," Karen said in his ear. "This me," Peter smiled, texting on his phone. "Kinda. Have a good vacation yourself. Oh yes, you should see the amount of blueprints I've browsed on Island. And various patents too." Karen browsed, not stolen, Peter. "Besides, you'll need all the help you can get when you get back to the workshop and improve your suit." The AI spoke as Peter walked in and took his seat by Izuku. "Guess so," he texted back, pocketing his phone. So, Peter looked at the green-haired youth. "Have a good camp?" he asked. "Why yeah." Izuku nodded. "I really felt that big leap in improvement in the second leg of the camp too. I feel like I can control my quirk a little bit more now. Thanks to All Might being here, no doubt," Peter mused mentally. "Well, you're not the only one who's improved." he said with a slight smile. Let's get that license, partner. Izuku beamed, grinning back and nodding. Yeah, I can't thank you enough for your help here, Kota said, bowing in respect with Vlad to his left, Yagi to his right. Indeed, the 3 weeks we have spent here has been very beneficial to our students. Thank you for accommodating us, Vlad said. Don't worry about it, Mandalay said. It was a little boring before you all got here outside of the occasional hero work. Wouldn't mind doing this again for future classes. The brown-haired woman walked up, the group still under the awning protecting them from the rain as she took Kota's hand. And Kota felt the small case in her big paw as he pocketed it. Good, we'll definitely consider it for future hero course classes going forward, Kota said. I wouldn't mind helping out next time too, Yagi added. It was nice to get out of the city for a while. Haven't had this much fresh air in ages. There's nothing quite like the wilds there, Yagi-san. Tiger flexed. You may not look it, but you surely sounded like you know your stuff. Well, Yagi laughed sheepishly, grinning with closed eyes. Thank you, haha. So, Pixie Bob sauntered up. We got numbers and stuff, will you call? She asked, blinking cutely, hands behind her back as she was putting on a light pose. Ragdoll let out a snort while Kota deadpanned. Not interested. Pixie Bob winced. I'm married, Vlad added. The blonde cat-themed heroine blanched, before looking at Yagi and then sighing as she sulked. The good ones are always taken or gay, she muttered, and Kota rolled his eyes. Yagi blinked, eyes wide. Don't mind her. Mandalay laughed lightly. Oh, and Kota. She looked down at her nephew. What do you say? She asked, as the young boy stepped up, looking up at the stoic-looking Aizawa. Silence reigned, save for the rain colliding on the dirt road behind them. Do you think? Thank you very much. Kota bowed deeply. You helped save me and... You're welcome, Kota replied. And don't fret too much over it, kid. We're heroes. We're just doing our jobs, he said, before turning around and activating his umbrella, Vlad finishing his handshake with Yagi as the two men walked to join him. He retracted his umbrella and walked onto the bus, seeing Vlad do the same, and Yagi got into his car as the wild pussycats waved at them. The shaggy-haired man turned towards his class, seeing them look at them in silence. Good, you're catching on. Kota placed his umbrella by his seat. I'm glad to say that this summer camp has been a resounding success, save for the last 2 days due to the weather. We'll be arriving back at UA today around noon at the earliest, assuming the rain lets up. From there, you have 5 days to catch up on any summer homework or to rest and refresh. Next Monday, we're going back to class. He took a pause, scratching his head a little. And we will prepare for the upcoming Hero Provisional License exams, on top of your normal class load for the fall term. He narrowed his eyes. It doesn't get easier from here, trust me. I'm proud of you all. Now let's head home. Kota let out a sigh, taking a seat at the front as the class behind him absorbed his little speech. He checked his pocket, taking out the hand-size case and opening it to reveal 4 glass vials the size of his pinky containing stray hairs or skin flakes from Kota's scalp. Whoever sprayed him with a spray that coagulated so fast had to have had access to some advanced pharmaceutical medicine. Kota's wound was rather deep, and for a spray to do that, it had to be traced. Somehow, it may not be much, but these vials were his only clue on whoever that masked person was. He closed the case and looked out the window. As the bus began to drive on the road, in the distance, the clouds remained dark and heavy, but he could see the few rays of sunlight pouring in intermittently. Kota closed his eyes, allowing himself to take a much-needed nap to rest his eyes, content to have held a safe and successful summer training camp. There you are, you exclaimed, arms wide as she trotted up, hugging Peter with his suitcase at his side. I didn't know you were coming straight to the house. I could have picked you up, she said happily. I thought you were on shift today, Peter explained as he hugged her back, before he pulled his suitcase into the apartment. Looking around, he saw that it was mostly clean, save for the occasional bathrobe on the couch, socks strewn about, and take-out boxes on the kitchen counter. Got the day off. Things have been getting slow around Misutafu. You shrugged. So you've been here all day. I fear for what's happened to your bedroom, Peter remarked wryly to the taller blonde woman. You stuck her tongue out at him. Shut up, you. She laughed. Anyway, you look tired. Peter shrugged. I was able to sleep some. Tiger kept waking us up at the worst times though. Tiger, one of the wild pussycats. He and the other heroes taught us. Oh, I remember those guys, you exclaimed. Their names were on the hero billboard chart last year. She stepped aside to let Peter into his room as she followed. He stretched his arms after he walked in. Gonna take a nap. Yeah, futon wasn't bad, but... Peter walked over and plopped down on the bed. Can't beat a nicely made bed. He turned over, looking at her, voice muffled by pillows. Tomorrow, we're doing a full flat cleaning, okay? It's that time of the month. You pouted, rolling her eyes. Alright. She smirked. You just take it easy for now. I bet you're hungry for some good food after 3 weeks out there. You're not wrong. Peter looked back at her. Tepon, you got it. You winked before she proceeded to close the door. The woman took a few steps before her phone chimed with a blue light on the dining table. Want me to send a vacation day request to your firm? Karen said from her phone. You nearly jumped, leaning over to see the app activated before shaking her head. Give a girl some warning there. But yeah, sounds good. Think I've got some days stored up. You sighed. But to use it on house cleaning. What a way to waste them. There are worse ways, like doing nothing, eating ice cream, and watching soap operas. Karen replied. You frowned. Is that an American thing? For older, mildly depressed women, yes. So, how is time at home? Yagi asked as he drove out of his neighborhood, Melissa sitting beside him. She was surprised to see him come back after his almost 2-week-long trip. All right for the most part. Classes start up for me next week with the fall semester, but I can get started on my engineering courses and get to work on creating gadgets to pass VERYYYY Academy. Then you'll be able to graduate this year. Yagi mused as he drove along the roads, the rain light as it came down around the suburb. He could make out Tokyo in the far distance as he got onto the major road that led towards UA. Proper, in December or the following spring. I'll graduate in May. Melissa smiled back at the skeletal man. Thanks for taking me by the way. Don't worry about it. Do you have your bus pass? Yeah, good. I don't mind driving you, but our schedules might not always coincide. Yagi said. She nodded. Let's play it by ear, Uncle Might. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what my schedule is gonna look like just yet. Yagi offered a good-natured smile. Of course. Before long, Melissa arrived at UA. Uncle Might said that he was going to talk some things over with the school principal on something before walking away with some guy in black with unkempt black hair. Okay, she turned around, seeing the map of UA before her on the wall as she took a photo with her phone for reference. Cafeteria is there. Restrooms are here. There it is. She tapped on the support department studio and smiled, walking along with a disposition that seemed opposite to the cloudy and dreary day outside. She got to the studio, not hard to find given the bold letters atop the metal door as she knocked on the door several times. Wonder if anyone is in. Melissa mused. There weren't many people at the prestigious school, given how it was still summer break. She pushed on the door lightly, wondering if it was unlocked. To her surprise, it was. Hello, she spoke out in Japanese. I'm coming in. Opening the door, Melissa saw the numerous 3D printers, lathes, mills, and blueprints the deeper she walked into the studio and turned the corner. That was when she saw her. Oh, hey Hatsum-san. Good afternoon. Melissa waved, but as she approached, she noticed that May wasn't focused on her. She seemed to be muttering to herself, leaning over on a drawing desk as she was busy drawing up some kind of blueprint. The blonde noticed a whiteboard beside her, with a list of things jotted down in bullet points. Injury prevention was circled at the top. Beneath that, armor, protection, instant medical application. No good. No good at all, May muttered, taking the sheet of paper and tossing it into a bin. One that was clearly overflowing with crumpled up ideas and designs. May. Melissa walked up, and upon placing a hand on May's shoulder, the girl started and turned about to blink those target eyes at her. Hello. Her eyes seemed to focus and zoom out before she smiled. There were dark circles under her eyes, like she hadn't slept very much. Sorry, don't remember your name. It's Melissa. May blinked for a moment before perking up. Oh right, it's you. She had a light smile on her face as she turned in her chair towards her. What are you doing here in the studio? Just came to get a lay of the land. All Might's become my guardian after what happened with Island and all. Melissa had her hand rub her opposing arm a bit as she looked away bashfully. So I'm taking my final year of classes online. But for my engineering class, I'm going to need a lab so you'll be around here more often? May asked. More or less. Melissa nodded. You seem to be pretty busy coming up with a blueprint of some kind. She even looked over, noticing some kind of module in a box on a table close to the drawing desk. In English, she saw a sticky note attached as she checked it out. It read Peter's other costume. Other costume? Oh, well, I guess I can give you a tour, May said as she stood back up, forcing a smile as she beamed at Melissa. Come on, time I show you around. Power Loader's out for lunch. I'll introduce you to when he gets back. An interloper at the camp, Nezu inquired, looking at the small box before Aizawa. Kashinori stood with him in the principal's office, the rain still coming down outside. Yeah, from what I can gather from the scene, they killed the bear. Aizawa handed the rat bear his phone for the small white furred creature to inspect the photo gallery, was able to cleanly cut off its arm, and may have had a vantage point to look at the lodge where the pussycats were stationed. It was pretty stormy that night, Aizawa. The storm hadn't fully come through the mainland yet. Toshinori replied. That night, but what about the ones before? The shaggy-haired man muttered. We don't know how long this unknown was there. The fact remains that he or she was there, and they had some kind of healing device or quirk. Nezu kept inspecting the photos, his black beady eyes unblinking as he handed the phone back to Aizawa. I trust the pussycats are in the know on this. What of the students? We didn't mention a word. Mandalay's nephew was shaken up that night, so the students decided it was best to give the boy space. Toshinori spoke. All right, best we keep this quiet. We can't rule out the possibility of another party as well. The actions of this masked man doesn't fit the modus operandi of the League. Nezu turned towards Aizawa. I trust you'll contact your sources for help. I have some skin and hair samples from the boy's hair and scalp. I know people who can trace the chemical compounds used from the spray. Whatever it is, we can trace it given time. A strength and a healing compound quirk, or it could be a support item. Nezu mused. For now, focus on the investigation on the side, along with your duties as teachers. Is there anything I can do to help? Toshinori asked. It's taken care of, All Might. Aizawa turned towards his colleague. I'll be meeting my people tonight on this. Momo sighed in pure relief, exiting the bathroom in her bathrobe with her hair wrapped up in a towel. She had gotten home an hour ago courtesy of Matu picking her up as usual, and she had decided that a nice warm shower was the first thing on her mind. She didn't mind the hot springs or the stalls that the lodge had, but she'd admit nothing could beat the marble tile and the top-of-the-line showerheads along with her vast array of shampoos from overseas. Enjoy the shower, came a voice as Momo left her bathroom, seeing Maya walking up the stairs in her typical business dress. I did. Maya nodded. Your father is bartering with some stock traders downstairs, so best to leave him be for now. Don't you usually talk to them? Momo asked. These are greenhorn Ivy League brats in New York. Maya had a face of stone. I can't fight all of his battles for him. Anything else happen? At the camp? What else? My speed's improved. Momo answered. Well done, her mother said simply before she turned around, ready to walk into the master bedroom and to her bathroom. I practiced shooting, Momo said suddenly, bringing her mother's eyes back to her. I improved that as well. She looked down, avoiding her mother's gaze. Perhaps we can practice later. Maya stopped, turning around as her eyes seemed to move about slightly, the gears in her head turning. If I find the time. Momo winced. Okay, well, I'll tend to my studies then. Momo sighed and began to walk past the slightly taller woman. She took a few steps, not noticing Maya look at the ground for a moment. Maya turned around, arms crossed as she leaned against the doorway before giving Momo her full attention. Momo, she turned, eye cocked. Yes, mother. Do you have any engagements with your friends tonight? Not really. Everyone is tired for the most part due to the camp. Why? Maya looked to the side for a brief moment, taking a deep breath. Well, would you like to go out with us? Me and your father, that is. Momo tilted her head. To eat. For dinner. Your father and I were planning on going to that new steakhouse in Corisanto, but we can go wherever you would like to go. She looked back at her daughter. Consider it a celebratory dinner for finishing your summer camp. Momo blinked. Rare was the day when her mother asked her for where she would like to eat. Most of the time it was at home with their in-house chefs, or when on vacation, at wherever they were talking business while she just sat there and listened into her mother's business dealings. Maybe. Momo scratched her neck lightly. Sushi. I know of a sushi and steak house in Corisanto. Maya reached into her pocket for her phone. Momo smiled lightly. Thanks, mother. The stone-faced woman closed her eyes, giving the barest of nods. Of course. Maya walked into her bedroom, and Momo heard her begin to talk with the restaurant for a reservation. All right, Peter said, opening the door to the support studio, beaming as he walked in. Back in action. Maybe it was the way he slept this morning. After 3 weeks on a futon, it felt amazing to be back in a fluffy bed. He looked around, hearing the sounds of the machines whirring. The 3D printers in motion in the other room as he peeked in, seeing some students in the support course at work on their gadgets. Must be some last-minute summer homework or something. Power loader is busy tending to the UA. Security system, Peter, Karen said in his ear. I'm currently in his ear as well. Ah, he working on something. You helping? I lent my services when Power Loader was making schematics on how to improve the UA barrier system in light of the USJ incident. And we have come up with some unique designs. Peter quirked an eyebrow as he leaned against a lathe. Did you come up with it yourself, or did you scope out Island? I browsed. He walked over, noticing that May's own private station was missing a certain pink-haired mad genius. The whiteboard beside the desk seemed clear, erased for the moment. On her workbench, he spotted that same old box as he looked inside it, reaching in to hold up the little module. He could see the cracked center, eyes gazing at the iron spider module as he set it down gently inside. Nothing here at UA had the machinery or surgical tools needed to go in and repair the module. I apologize, Peter. I wish I could do more to fix it. Don't worry about it. Peter smiled lightly. We're here for a suit that can be worked on. He shouldered his backpack before going to a spare workbench, pulling out the Stark suit as he set it down. As he began to look it over, he could see a little bit of wear and tear across the fabric. Maybe cutting out the soles on the bottom may be a bad idea, he mused, looking at the shoe ends of the red-blue suit. Or having some kind of opening. If you have the top-end kind of mesh that astronauts have to wear, then we could implement it. Would only cost several $100,000 for a square foot of material. Karen mused. Peter winced. Yeah, let's make some tune-ups and repairs. He turned, tapping on the holoprojector to display a blueprint. About time we start from scratch then. He clapped his hands together as the holo screen appeared before him. Something to help me enhance my spider sense like at the camp. I have amassed an inventory and spreadsheet of all available materials in the studio, Karen said in his ear. Alongside, before she could finish, Peter was nearly knocked off his feet, a sudden impact nearly sending him tumbling over as his feet tried to catch him before he fell over like an overgrown tree. His arms windmilled before he grabbed onto the thing that hit him before looking down to see that said thing had a mop of pink hair and a black tank top. Hey May, he said, happy to see her but somewhat bewildered by the affectionate hello. May squeezed tight around his ribs, tight enough that he could actually register the pressure before she pulled away. She beamed up at him with her eyes whirring in their pupils, zooming in and out. You're back, she declared happily. Peter chuckled, smiling. So I am. May's grin was wide before looking him up and down. And no bullet holes. Peter blinked, staring at the girl. Then, he felt the beginnings of a very real sense of unease blooming in his mind. From anyone else, he may have taken it as a joke, in poor taste yeah, but still a joke. May was happy. May could be funny, but not because she went out of her way to tell jokes. She was the most literal person he'd ever met. If she said that, it was because she'd been thinking about it. His mouth opened and closed, then opened again, suddenly very aware that he hadn't talked about it with her. What happened on an island? No bullet holes, he choked out for lack of anything better to say in the face of May's joy and his sudden wellspring of guilt. Had she been sitting here, worried about him and thinking about that for 3 weeks? Nearly 4. She beamed, her megawatt bright smile so all-encompassing that he almost didn't notice the circles under her eyes, or the pallor of her skin. It was pale, paler than normal. May, he ventured. When was the last time you got out of the studio? She blinked. I dunno. Tuesday. He blanched. May, it's Monday. Oh, she blinked. Then her smile returned and she giggled. Really? Gingerly he reached for his jacket. Work could wait. Work could really wait. Come on, let's go get you something to eat and get you back home to your parents, where you're gonna sleep a full 8 hours. But I'm busy, she complained as he grasped her shoulders and began leading her out. I have a really important baby I'm trying to make for you. Peter felt a lead weight settle in his gut as he asked his next question, dreading the answer. Yeah, what's it do? Fixes bullet holes, she declared proudly. Or stops him. One of the two. Peter did his level best not to cringe, the guilt curdling inside his throat as he led May back into the sunlight. So tiresome. His job was just so draining. But no one else wanted to do it, to say nothing of the pension and salary he was making too. It was so lucrative. But in many ways, Yokimaru found sympathy for the dirty but well-paid workers. Plumbers, sewer maintenance cleaners. They charged their own rates and hours for the former, and had an outstanding union, salary, and benefits for the latter. And morticians too, dealing with dead bodies. No one wanted to do that. Yet the money made you do it. What Yokimaru wouldn't give for a nap. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to the next subject of business. The older beige-haired man groaned, rising from his desk and sitting up straight as he looked into the computer screen, seeing the windows of the teleconference. Same biannual hat for the Hero Public Safety Committee, meeting at the beginning of every September and March. Except it was late August. That nagging Abe Hanako wanted to move it up for the sake of the upcoming Provisional Hero License exam. He could have had the best steak hat possible. Maybe even drive out to Fuji for a hot spring resort, or fly to Okinawa for some sun. But no, Yokimaru was here earlier than anticipated because he was the best man available for coming up with the provisional exam. Mira-san, Abe said, the older woman staring at him through the screen as Yokimaru scratched his eyes. God, it was getting late. President Abe, Yokimaru said respectfully, I am ready to line out the details for the exam. We have the services of the Fujitome Stadium District for the exam. He pulled out the spreadsheet that he had compiled himself, sharing his screen with his fellow HPSC officials. 7 stadiums, with a field that can be utilized for any measure of challenges. My best approximate capacity is around 300 to 400 applicants, tops. Fujitome Stadium District. That is where the Olympics used to be held, right? The stadiums were all clustered together to look like the Olympic logo. One official mentioned Yamato, his name was. Yokimaru couldn't care enough to remember his first name. Yes, centered near Nantu Ward. Abe coldly commented. By that metric, it fits our prediction of around 2,500 applicants for the upcoming exam. It's a perfect place to cut the chaff. Where would the main exam be held then, assuming we cut the 2,500 examinees? One official inquired. Ogi, if Yokimaru recalled, had a very boring yet easy to sleep to voice. If you scroll down, you can see that we plan to use 6 of the 7 stadiums for the preliminary exam. The final one is where the exam will be held. Yokimaru looked at Abe. And the stadium officials and property owners have completed the renovations as well. We will be able to use them for our exam, and they can use said features for any events going forward. If all tests go well, Yokimaru rubbed his eyes lightly, then we can use this site as our testing facility for the future. Well done, Mira-san. Abe nodded. Now then, it is time we flesh out the details of the exam, basing it off of incidents that have happened throughout the year. Yes, Yokimaru replied as he looked at his spreadsheet, taking note of some criminal and disaster incidents. In truth, my friends, it has been a relatively quiet year, but several events attract my eye that can serve as a perfect way to test and show us who in the next generation has what it takes to serve hero society. The tired-looking man drawled, pausing to let out a yawn. Every provisional exam is based on the events that have transpired between exams, and I have taken up 3 events in particular to use as references for how to build the exam, if it meets your approval. Scroll down and you'll see them. One official spoke up, looking like a guerrilla man of sorts. It seems you're basing this on 2 domestic events and 1 international one. Of course, the man yawned as he sipped some of his water. After all, the USJ crisis, the Hasu massacre, and the Island terrorist attack are a fine basis on how we can test those youngsters. Now, here is what I have in mind for the curriculum. Better keep it short and sweet. Sooner this gets done, the sooner this meeting could be adjourned and he'd finally get some sleep on that couch in his office. Thank God for investing in a comfy couch. Shouta walked through the halls of UA. As sunbeams poured in from the windows to the side, everyone else making their way to class. As most students greeted each other with hellos and good mornings, he was occupied with the email and his phone. One not connected to his UA phone. Eraserhead. We've investigated some of those skin and hair samples you gave us the other day. Here are some test results. So far, there's some kind of trace amounts of polymer and chemical with unique elements involved. Doesn't match any civilian support gear ointment. Very high quality. Definitely something we have not seen before. Though a girl in Interpol will send it her way if you want. Kirihara. Kirihara was one of his oldest confidants in the domestic department in the Shinjuku Police Department. If those labs didn't have any chemical matches of any civilian high-tech pharmaceuticals with Bogey's magical healing spray, then it must either be related to a quirk or some new brand of healing gel. The most logical and practical explanation was quirk. But the bare wound, multiple quirks, but only the Naomu had those, and again, this didn't match the description or the mo of the League of Villains. Send it to her if she can keep this on the down low. Not sure if this is still a quirk or not. Stay in touch. Send. He looked up, seeing the big Class 1A sign as he got to the door and opened it. Good morning, Claw. He was cut off. Everyone was in their seats, looking at him expectantly, save for Bakugo, who was looking out the window in typical fashion. Good, he said with a nod, walking in as he brushed some of his long black hair behind his shoulder as he got to his podium. First day of the new term, off to a good start. Now then, let's get down to business. Shouta put his hands in his pockets. As you know, the provisional license exams will begin in 4 weeks, around the middle of September, which means our time will be short. Most schools don't do summer camps like the one we did. As you can imagine, it was to ensure that you would get a significant leap in progress to becoming heroes. He narrowed his eyes, because you will be facing a majority of 2nd and 3rd year students in this exam. First years rarely compete, but me submitting this class says more about you than you'd expect. Guess we're pretty good, ain't we, sensei? Zero mused. Wait, I thought we were going up against other kids in our grade. Ashido said. Most hero academies in the country don't want to send their new crop in so soon. But I figured given the progress you all have had, along with your experiences in your internships and outside of them, His eyes panned over towards the right of the class, seeing Parker, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu, and Todoroki, all in one row, that you all deserve a shot to advance in your career as a P. The problem child row when you include Bakugo in the mix. Besides, you want as many bites at this apple as you can. Shouta tapped on his podium's keypad, bringing up his holo screen as he began to tap the proper logos and icons. Here is our course load from now until the exams. Shouta gestured his thumb to the holographic whiteboard behind him detailing his schedule. Homeroom at the beginning of the day will be reserved for the start of the day, and study hall for your other classes. Your normal general education will go on as normal too. Hero class after lunch, from here until the exams, will be devoted to quirk refinement, practice on your own, and various small exercises. The camp helped push your limits. Now back in a familiar setting, we'll test how you do with the new heights you've reached. He stood up straight. In addition, if any of you feel the need to improve upon your support gear, do so. The exams will allow usage of them, so take this time to prepare accordingly and get in contact with the support department and the companies who have done your gear. He saw a hand being raised. Parker, yeah, I was wondering, what if we, fail? Can we retake the exam at a later date? Parker inquired. You mentioned how second and third year students would be competing. Would they be repeat test takers who have failed prior exams, in a sense? Correct. The exam is biannual, held in March and September. Shouta explained. Of course, not getting your license now means you'll fall behind when you go back to your internships and you won't be able to take on more responsibility at whatever hero firm you'll work with. In a word, a license will give you the experience and the means to become a true pro hero, albeit in a provisional fashion and as a temp sidekick in a hero firm. The black-haired man turned back to the class. Hence why I mentioned, you need as many bites at this apple as you can. You have 4 weeks to prepare. He yawned, grabbing his sleeping bag under the desk and placing his legs inside. That'll be all. Lying down, Shouta dozed off to a morning nap as he heard his class getting to study hall and catching up. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 20. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.